touch me? Are you kissing her like, are you kissing me? Are you touching her like, are you touching me? Are you kissing her like, are you kissing me? We could be, we could be. I know we're gonna get hot and heavy, so I don't need my heater. Hey Cody, welcome in. I got it working, my camera. Turns out the plug was loose. Fancy that. I'm a real life IT girl now. Michael C. Logan, hello, hello. Long time no see, that's exactly right. No cake for today. But still we be vibing. So I have absolutely literally nothing planned today. Literally down to the title. So yeah, we're gonna see how we go. Yeah, no cake while I live type beat, exactly. It's been a decade and a day. It's so true. Welcome in. The ads are gonna start in a minute. And I literally just saw, C Locket, that you have already uploaded a video from the 2-year stream anniversary. That was literally yesterday. How is that possible? Maybe we'll watch that together a bit later. What else do I want to do? Oh yeah, please. Can someone please remind me in about an hour that I have to move the clothes from the washer to the dryer? Because I will literally forget if it's up to me. Or should I just set a timer for myself? Maybe that's a more responsible thing to do. Okay. Because that's kind of, yeah, what happened last time. It happens to me all the time. 1 hour timer. So, yeah. CJ, welcome in. How are you guys doing? I swear, like, are you not sick of me yet, guys? Having me stream basically every day? It's nice. What was I planning on doing? Oh yeah, so we can watch the new Club Cherry song. Some of you may be familiar with it because it was originally posted, or just the like audio was posted on the Patreon. And I was like wondering for a while, what should I do with this song? Because the beat isn't mine. I wanted to make that very clear. And I thought, well, is it fair? Is it ethical to post something like that online? But as long as I'm not claiming that it's mine and, you know, pointing in the direction of the artist, I figured that was maybe kind of fair. So all the details are in the description. And if I get like, what's the word? Not demonetized. My channel isn't even monetized. But if there's like a claim on it, if there's a copyright claim, it's like, yeah, that's totally fair. So yeah, I ended up posting it anyway. And I think it's kind of a fun song. It might not be to everyone's taste because there's like heavy, purposeful auto-tune throughout because it's kind of what the app that I used, it's like its thing. But yeah, we'll listen to that later and you can decide for yourself if it's your cup of tea or cup of pee. No, okay. Sorry. We literally have just started. I'm already moving sus. Sorry, guys. Tim, hello. CJ says impossible to get sick of me. I'm gonna test that. I'm gonna test that. So don't tempt me. And so yeah, I literally just posted that. And what else was I doing? Some chores. Boring. I'd much rather be talking with you guys here. And so, oh yeah, and I was also getting my camera kind of more fixed because I think I finally got the focus working kind of. It usually ends up focusing on my mic. But like, am I in focus? Yeah, I'm standing on business. What's not clocking? Apparently, if I press down the button and then sit where I'm supposed to sit, it will focus on that point. Because I used to think I was limited by my arm span, right? But if I do this, sit back, it'll take a photo, and it should be focused on me now. I don't know, it kind of didn't work, but you know what I mean. I'm still working it out. Yeah, I'm standing on business like JB type beat. And so, yeah. I'm full on IT girl. Anyway, how you guys been? What have you been up to in the few hours that we've been apart? And yeah, today's Thursday for me, which, well, I mean, Thirsty Thursday calls to me. But I don't have anything in particular to be thirsty about right now, which is rare. Well, is that true? It's just a general baseline of thirstiness. So, in particular, there's nothing that really stands out, but it's just all thirstiness. It's thirstiness all the way down. IT girl, TBD girl, all the above. That's crazy work. See, look, your memory is quite impressive, actually. Like when you remembered the thing with the glasses. I was impressed. Very cheeky, though. Oh yeah, maybe we can talk more about the journal thing, the little story thing that we both got the news of together last stream. I got the confirmation that my story is going to be published in a very respectable Q1 journal, which is amazing. It's like so flattering. And I've been assigned 2 editors. I don't know what they're going to say. I'm nervous, and I feel like I'm going to be basically entirely deferential to whatever they recommend. Especially towards the end of my story, it wasn't rushed. I did put all my effort into it, but with the word count that I was given, I kind of had to necessarily keep things quite sparse. And so I was like, okay, they might recommend me cutting some stuff to make the other parts more detailed, or just like removing some of the more raunchy stuff. I'm amenable to whatever they will end up recommending, or even if it's just like, the typos. There's nothing worse than submitting like an essay and then realizing literally as you press send that there's a bunch of typos. That's literally exactly what happened to me. So yeah, I'm excited, and I'll keep you guys posted on the entire process. Eventually, when it is out publicly, I wonder if I'll be able to show you guys. I don't know. Yeah, for privacy's sake. I wonder if I can ask them to like keep my name, like to use my nickname or pseudonym or something like that. Because, just in terms of doxing. But that's for later, Emmy, to worry about. As for what I like to be called, honestly, anything's fine. Like, at this point, like even before I started streaming, I've always had a bunch of different names. Like Emily, Emma, Eminem, MZ, Emmy, of course. And, just basically any name that I can recognize as being directed at me, I'll probably respond to. But in general, I picked Emmy for this channel because it's mostly what my closest friends call me, and what my brother and sister, what my brother and sister both call me most of the time. And so I wanted something that was kind of close and personal to me. And so, yeah, cherry because it rhymes, kind of. Like, it's not even my favorite fruit. It's like, I'm such a traitor. My favorite fruit's probably mango. So I should have called myself Emmy Mango. But I don't know. Does it have the same ring to it? You guys can decide. Emmy Bummy. God damn it. That's the extra special nickname that I hated being called. But now I've kind of, I don't know. It's not like I like it now, but I see where it's coming from, if that makes sense. And so, yes, you can even call me Emmy Bummy. But yeah, Emmy's a classic. And there's actually a lot of Emmys out there that I quite admire. I know there's a YouTuber called Emmy who, she's so cute. She's literally so adorable. She makes, she's like a chef kind of. She makes all these cool recipes and stuff. And yeah, like there's of course the Emmys, as in the awards and stuff like that. So it's nice to share that kind of semantic space if you want to go there. But yeah, my parents probably call me Emily most of the time. So I feel so formal in that way. But yeah, I hope that sums it up. A long-winded way to say, call me whatever you want. From all the Emmys, you're my favorite. That's very sweet. Honestly, I don't know if I'm my own favorite from all the Emmys. Probably the Emmy I was just mentioning, the chef. If I can find her channel, I'll shout it out. She's wonderful. She's literally like a little ray of sunshine. And is her name literally just Emmy? Emmy Chef? maybe it's spelt, oh, there it is. Her YouTube channel is called Emmy Made, M-A-D-E, and she is so cute. Whoops, I don't want to play anything by accident. I'll show you guys the channel. And Scooby, this is for you. Ready? Ding! This is a nice blouse. Yeah, I haven't worn this before. I'm almost certain, because this isn't mine. I think this is my brother's that he just accidentally left here, like when he was moving out. And I'm happy to keep it, but he'll probably ask for it back at some point. But yeah, I'm almost certain, like, I wouldn't have worn this because it isn't mine. It is artsy. I think it's actually a painting that's just been turned into a t-shirt. I'll show you guys properly in just a sec. But, oh, shit, sorry. This is Emmy Made. She's got 3.1 million subscribers, so forgive me for shouting her out like she's some underground noob. I always feel quite sheepish doing that, but just in terms of like the types of YouTubers and stuff that I personally like. Is this gonna work? Yeah. Emmy Made. So, yeah. Oh my gosh, am I peeking the mic? She's so cute. Look at the hairstyle. Like literally, when I was when I had my own pixie cut, it was growing out, and at one point it did look like this, but she makes it work. I think for me, I look like a rejected anime character. But I can't see her with any other hairstyle, to be honest. She's so cute. Oh look, it's actually quite long in this one. But yeah, this is what can I say? My own name is being mogged. Yeah. Yeah, is it Sunday in the Park? Is that what it's called? And so, anyway, we're off to a dashing start. Just undermining my own name. Anyway, I actually wanted to bring something up from last stream. After watching a few of those clips and like the compilations of what we got up to like here on this channel, I noticed something. And this is another one of those instances where I haven't really had a chance to say this out loud before. So it's going to come out kind of piecemeal, and I hope you allow me to put those pieces together. It's astounding. It is literally astounding, the difference between streaming, like having a stream for the first time and performing it and being in it and experiencing it, right? It is so different to watching it back sometime later, whether it's a day later or 2 months or 3 years. Like, it's almost like an entirely different experience. And the task or challenge for me has been to almost hold space for the possibility that what I'm experiencing in the moment may not actually be how it comes across later, if that makes sense. Because, see, like, you ask a really, really good question, for better or for worse. And I think the annoying answer is awe. Like, it's almost interesting to me to note how there have been some streams in the past where I've thought, oh my gosh, this is bombing terribly. Like, you know, there's not much interaction. People don't really seem that interested in what I'm saying, or I don't really know what I'm saying. Like, I'm kind of spiraling in circles. And then watching it back, and especially in those clip compilations that you made, C. Lockett, those clips being some of the funniest and like the most absurd and the most out of context. And it's just so interesting to note that the pattern there. Because if it was once or twice, sure, that's like fun thing to kind of realize. But the fact that it's so common, it's like a pattern for me. It speaks to something, and I'm not sure what. I think, yeah, maybe just that idea of like what may work in the moment may be different to what works in like kind of a video format being played back. And so, does that make sense? Because like I remember certain streams, like even the ones where I was like in Perth, for instance, or the phone streams that we've done occasionally, where I've just felt like I was floundering. Like, oh, fuck, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I've got nothing planned. I don't have a topic. I don't have a game that I want to play or a niche. And so just saying like kind of the first thing that comes to my mind, right? That's a common occurrence, yeah. And at the time feeling foolish, like, oh God, why did I say that? But then watching them back, those I think were the moments where I laughed the hardest as a viewer. And so I don't know what that means. It's just something funny. And I'm sure I'll have more thoughts on that as we go. But I think it's got to do with the fact that the experience as a performer, and I use that word for a lack of a better term, like streaming right now as a performer, even though I'm just sitting here and being myself, like there is a necessary divide or difference between the experience performing versus watching. And sometimes you can't see quite as objectively as you may want about what's actually working or what's actually funny. And yeah, it's like sometimes just a recontextualizing of things can make all the difference. Like what I was saying about C. Lockett, your editing, you really take the best of the best, like the cream of the crop, and you make it shine. Like you polish it up until it's something that, you know, it feels like it's its own thing. I think I use the term better and bigger than the sum of its parts. And so maybe you don't get that vibe watching a full-on 4-hour stream, but when you pick out some of those individual clips that really highlight whatever it is, then all of a sudden the polish transforms it into, I don't know, that vision of funniness or cheekiness or weirdness. And so, yeah, it is hard to imagine how others perceive you while you stream. But then once you get to perceive your own self, you kind of get a glimpse of that, the gaze, G-A-Z-E. And so anyway, interesting. And it does make sense, because when you watch other YouTubers or Twitch streamers and their compilations of stuff, again, it's their best bits, it's the highlights. They can't be like that all the time, 24/7. I think it would actually get kind of grating. But yeah, it was nice. And I just wanted to say thank you guys again for the incredible amount of love and support that you've shown, not just yesterday in that 2-year anniversary, but since the very beginning. I know I was basically a nervous wreck yesterday, but now that I've been able to calm down, I can thank you guys properly. It's really it's a special thing for me. So, and yeah, authenticity, Mida, is a huge, huge thing. It's something that from the very start, I was like, here are certain things that I just won't do or won't say because they don't align with who I am. And it's not to begrudge anyone else who may do that sort of thing. It's just because I know it wouldn't be real. Like, you know, it wouldn't be me, essentially. And so it's been a conscious effort from literally day dot. Even when I was just doing this as an experiment, I knew, like, okay, certain topics or certain modes of presentation, certain, like, attitudes or behaviors I either will or won't do, in pursuit of, like, just trying to be myself, you know? Wherever you go, there you are type beat. And I wanted to be okay with the you that I found. And so, yeah, I think it's been working so far. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy playing characters when it comes up. That's actually something I really admire about other people, like people that can just suddenly become someone else and just delight and engage, you know, wearing a hat for a little while. But all the time, I don't think it's even possible for me, to be honest. It's exhausting. And so, yeah, authenticity is a huge thing. Leading with gentleness and curiosity and interest. Like, it seems obvious and maybe sounds pretty easy, but I think online, at least, it can be hard to, to sometimes, I don't know if the right term is like, not crash out. But yeah, that's also been a concern of mine, just not crash out. So anyway, they were asking, how do you feel right now in one word or less? And I asked this back to you guys also, one of my favorite questions. I feel fresh. That's my word. And so I'm curious, what would you guys say for your own selves? And the one word or less is absolutely valid. You can just say if that's how you feel. And Chubbs, welcome in. A thoughtful conversation is a very nice compliment to pay. Thoughtful is a fantastic word. It's like among those very important words, like when I talk about how I would like to be perceived or how I would like to see myself, usually interested is the first one that comes to mind, and it's true. But thoughtful is very close. Like it's probably second. So that's nice of you to say. Mida, is it Mida or Mida? 2009. You feel stressed. I'm sorry to hear it. I have been there though. So I'm hoping you can take some time to just relax and hopefully find your own freshness here. Sometimes for me, if I'm stressed, something really small can help a lot. Like playing one of my favorite songs, maybe one I haven't heard in a while, or literally just writing down the thing that's stressing me out, you know? However silly it may sound, like it's too cold in here, you know? Just writing it down and being like, okay, this is a thing now. I've externalized it. Is there any way to alleviate it or ameliorate this feeling, which means improve it? And so sometimes it's not as easy as that if it's quite a complicated thing or like a multifaceted structural thing. But even like, what's the word? Releasing the valve a little bit can be helpful. And so I hope you find some of that here today. And Mida, okay, that's perfect. And Polydactyl, hello. You're on the bullet train? That's so fucking cool. I know this isn't a movie about a bullet train, but Train to Busan is such a great movie. And, oh God, it's got the guy from Squid Game in it, if I'm not mistaken. Am I mistaken? No, yeah, he's in it. And so good. Such a great actor, great movie. If you're into like, I'm peeking the microphone, I'm sorry. I never used to. If you're into zombie kind of movies, it's a good one. And yeah, I feel like so weird now recommending all kinds of movies. I used to be just the one and done gal, Cat in the Hat, but I've been forced now to expand my horizons and I've been enjoying it so far. It's a great zombie movie. I totally agree. Peely Axe, welcome in. How you doing, my friend? Check it out. My Charizard. And the sound is working as well. This is so weird. Like, since I've like updated everything and put everything onto my new computer, like sometimes I'll just not do anything and like the problems will fix themselves. Like what? Zola, welcome into you too. If you're wondering what that is, that's a it's a drawing that I did on MS Paint. Do I have MS Paint on this computer? I have to download it. If not. Oh, I don't have it. Oh, I do have it. Perfect. Let me pin that to my taskbar. Someone asked for a fox, and that was my drawing. It's accurate, right? I think it's totally accurate. Oh, there we go. Sea Locket, what would you like me to draw? This is our first doodlebob since I have come back, and I wonder if I'll be able to actually make this work. Because, yeah, this new setup, I haven't really fully gotten it right. You want me to draw a fox? Okay. The Mona Lisa. Imagine like I got secretly like art lessons in like, you know, in my free time. And then the next time someone requested a doodlebob, I was just really good. You guys were like, what the fuck? I just like recreated the Mona Lisa perfectly. Now bear with me guys. I haven't fully set this up yet. So I don't know if it's going to look good, but is it blank canvas? Oh, yeah. And then paint. Maybe? What? Why does it look like that? Wait a sec, guys. I think I can do this. No. This is gonna be another one of those boomy tings moments. Come on now. IT tings. What the? Okay. Come on now. Live in such a way that the problems resolve themselves. It's so funny and so true. Because like I was having this problem where whenever someone followed, the sound wouldn't work. And I hadn't done anything to make that happen, right? Like I just had transferred all my files over. And so I was like, okay, I have to look into that. But then I just left it. And now it is just randomly working again. So that's happened more than once. It's like so weird. Can you guys see that? No. Weird. Maybe I should just try again. Or if I really have to, I'll go old school and draw something on my notebook. But I do like showing you guys on paint, and it does have a funnier outcome. So give me a sec, guys. I think I can make this work if I transform it to fit to the page. That didn't work. Or this. No. The fuck? It's Drover, guys. It's simply Drover. Why is it just that section? What the hell? You know what? No, I'm gonna try something else. I'm gonna try and make a new one. Control Alt. Do not troll me, like seriously. I can't actually draw. Trust me. I'm gonna try and make a new one. What is it? Display. It's a video capture. Paint. We're gonna see if this works, okay? Yeah, okay. Okay. Sorry, don't mind my little scribbles there. So I'm gonna get rid of this old one because we don't need that. Is it that one? But it's a little bit wide, so can I? Yes, guys. IT girl. I'm such an IT girl. Okay. Something's happening. Now it's a little bit of a weird shape because it doesn't fit as nicely. What if I do this? Yes, guys. IT girl. Okay. We got it. And so now, da 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 da. Perfect. You asked for a fox. Oh god. Okay. Just any fox? What does the fox say? Okay. I need to fucking, how do I do this? Let me start fresh. Whoops, that's not fresh. How do I clear? Funny comment here. Oh god. I love how you guys always like catch the vibe so like immediately. Welcome in, welcome in. How do I clear this? Select and delete. It's a roundabout way, but it gets the job done. A fox, a fox, a fox. You think since the first incident I would have learned how to do this, right? But I don't think I'm any better from yeah, that very first time. So a fox. You guys see that? Here's the ears. Does it have a snout? Like what kind of nose? Does it have a snout? Fuck. We'll come back to that. That's a face. It's got kind of a lean body, I think. And a tail. God. Shit. I don't know what kind of fox this is. It is giving Batman mask. You're so right. Fluffy. So this is like meant to be fluff. And yeah, I don't know what kind of. Wait, let me zoom in. Why? Why is this so cursed? You know what? If I can't do it realistically, I might as well do it, you know, I might as well go over the top with it. Yeah, that's meant to be the eyes. Like anime. Ding! Shining. Oh, hello. Cute and cursed. That's so true. There's a subreddit called Blurst Images, and it's like a mix of blessed and cursed. See, okay, I should also say, some of you guys who have been around, you know that I have what's called aphantasia, which is like if you were asked to imagine a red apple in your mind, like how acutely could you picture it? With how much fidelity? For me, I have not full aphantasia, like it's not completely blank in my mind, but usually it's if I was asked to imagine a red apple, it'd be a really hazy, almost certainly black and white, like hard to capture image in my mind's eye. And so it's only when I'm really, really focused, like let's say meditating, or yeah, just like dedicated to the task of singularly picturing something in my mind that I can kind of bring it into focus. And yes, it is a spectrum. You're absolutely right. And so I imagine a lot more vividly in poetry. That's such a beautiful way to put it. And I think, again, it's why I have often turned to poetry as opposed to a more visual medium, because like it allows me to say or experience all the things that I might not be able to say or experience otherwise. And so what's weird though is that I can actually quite vividly see things in my own dreams, you know? Like I see my own dreams in quite vivid color, and they're they're almost like I'm experiencing them in real life. And so I always found that a bit interesting. But that's why my lucid dreams and nightmares are always so scary, because they feel so real, and I'm not used to that. Like I'm not used to such a vivid recollection in my mind. Can I smell things in my dreams? That's a great question. I don't think so. I'll have to keep my nose out for that though, because like I can't remember. Surely. Or maybe it's just like the knowledge of what you're meant to be smelling, if that makes sense. Yeah, nerfed in some ways, buffed in others. Is very true. I don't know what kind of nose a fox has. Like, I've forgotten. Is it like, no, it's not like a button nose. I think it's more like a snout that connects to the mouth, right? But I kind of fucked myself here. And then we can look at a picture of a fox as well to see. It's kind of like, is it like that? Like the nose and then the mouth, you know? You kind of get what I'm saying? That looks kind of weird. That is cursed. Not an Arctic monkey, an Arctic fox. Why do the legs look like that? You guys need to give it a name. I'm so sorry. Not terrible? Oh, you guys are always too kind. Oh, mercy. I have drawn worse, I should say, if you can believe it. But considering this isn't even my first attempt at a fox, I feel like I should be doing better. Anyway, you asked. And so I'll actually bring up the aphantasia chart as well, so you guys can see for yourselves. But yeah, my fox. What does the fox say? You guys remember that shit? What were we doing in 2016? Oh God. Anyway, bravo, bravo, bravo. It is Foxy. Foxy Cleopatra. We could call it Foxy Cleopatra. Yeah. If you know, you know. Cleopatra. Yeah, baby. And actually, I don't know if this is like interesting or not, but we were talking earlier about nicknames and what you can call me. There's a few friends that I've met from the Elvis convention, if you can believe it, that I've gone to now, I think twice in a row. And a few of my friends from there call me Cleopatra or Cleo because I'm half Egyptian, half Greek. And that's cute as well, because it's like, it's divorced phonetically from my actual name, but there's still that level of, that thread of connection from like my heritage. And so I literally will respond to almost anything. And why actually one of my Club Cherry songs mentions Cleopatra. So Foxy Cleopatra, that's exactly it. It is pretty slay. let me bring up the aphantasia chart, and because I want to know from you guys where you all fall. So the lore does run pretty deep. Is this right here? There's a few different ones, like there's one with an apple. I like the star one because it's so simple. But if I were to ask you to imagine in your mind's eye a red star, what is like most similar to what you could conjure, you know? I'm curious. For me, it's roughly a 3 or a 4. And on very certain instances, like on special occasions, I can maybe get to a 5. Like if I'm concentrating like really hard, if I've spent some time really getting in the zone. I'm curious. See, Lockett, you're a 1. That's interesting. Because you're so good at making videos and stuff. I would have imagined you've got like that visual imagination quite acutely, but you never know. Yeah. There's also, there's like the hearing version of this, which I don't know if there is a real test for it. But I have pretty good like internal hearing, if that makes sense. Like if someone were to ask me to imagine Elvis saying, "Hey there, little baby," like I could probably imagine that quite accurately in my mind. Yeah, if it's a 1, that's very, very fair. Honestly, when I'm just going about my day and not really picturing anything, if I'm not reading, mine is also quite close to a 1 or 2. And when asked, I can conjure up a 3 or a 4. Yeah, it's interesting, right? And it does depend on what people define as their like mind's eye. Because my parents were both like, "Oh yeah, it's a 6 all the time, no matter what." I was like, that's weird. Like, I don't know. It's so different between everyone. But I'm glad that I can actually hear things internally, because a lot of people don't even have like an internal monologue, which is fine. But I quite like my internal monologue. I like being able to, I don't know, listen to things if I want, even if having a song stuck in your head can be quite annoying. But like if I wanted to play a song, like not out loud, I could play it in my mind and hear kind of all the different instruments if I know it well enough. I think that's a cool skill to have. It helps if you're into music, which I am. And so, yeah. Here's another one. Like if someone were to ask you to picture a red apple, with how much detail, like how much fidelity could you imagine that red apple? Because it goes from literally nothing at the 5 to kind of a vague outline or more of a cartoonish apple. And then you go into black and white, but a bit more detailed. And then like almost a photorealistic apple with like the shading and everything and the textures. I find that really interesting. And I've interrogated my friends. There are people out there who literally picture things as if it is photorealistic. I have one friend who's like, if I wanted to, I could watch the entire Shrek movie in my own head. And it would look like the actual movie. I'm like, that's so cool. And at times, I've tested them as well. I've tried to describe something really wacky and wild and like beyond my own imagination to see if they could picture it. I'd be like, so if I described a mystical fairy with like glowing iridescent wings flying over the city and like, you know, shooting laser beams down, could you picture that? And they'd be like, yeah, just instantly. I'd be like, what the hell? Like for me, I can only conceive of it as information, like as data. I can't see it unfolding like a movie in my mind, and I kind of wish I could, but you know, we've all got our own things, right? It's impressive. It absolutely is. Tex, welcome in. Let's see. Do you picture things visually like as if they're a photo, or is it more like a symbolic thing, or is it simply just data like it is for me? My friend asked me a really interesting question, which was, if someone were to ask you to picture your grandma's couch, for instance, how would you remember what color it is? Like, how would you know what color it is? And I ended up typing out, because this was over Messenger, a pretty long response, which maybe I can share with you guys if that's of interest, about the difference between like knowing information versus like recalling it or like imagining it. Because I think, however finicky, there is a really distinct difference. Because she was basically asking me, how do you know what color your grandma's couch is if you can't picture it, right? And for me, my answer was basically along the lines of, well, I know it because in the same way that I know what someone's name is, you know? Like, I don't picture their name. I just store it in the same place that I understand 2 + 2 = 4. You know, like, does that make sense? Writing in a journal does absolutely help a lot. For someone like me, especially, my memory is quite finicky. It's a constant battle of remembering things, keeping track of things, wondering if I've said it before or like if it was just a dream, you know? And so a journal is literally a second brain for me. It's like a place that I can have something down permanently as a point of reference. And it's why I recommend everyone, like, if that type of thing interests you, it's absolutely like necessary, I would say. As lame as it is, yeah. And so I've had many journals throughout my life. Some of those I've shared with you guys. And nowadays, I think I have a bunch of second brains, which may not be the best idea, to be honest. This is something I'm currently still working on. But like, now I have my own like iPhone, my notes, voice notes, text notes. I've got my computer. I've got my written journals. I've got you guys here, like with these sessions that we have together. And those are all like little brains, if that makes sense. And it would probably be wise to have a singular place of consolidation. But for now, it hasn't been too disastrous. And I think that's my issue. Like, if I can get away with something, the lazy part of me will just continue until I reach this roadblock, like, oh shit, maybe I should have taken that into account earlier. But since getting Scrivener, and this is not sponsored, by the way, this new program of mine, it's kind of slowly becoming my one-stop shop for everything, just because its functionality is so out of this world, essentially. For a writer, you know, this probably doesn't really matter to anyone who's not interested in writing, but as a writing program, it's like Word on steroids. And as a Word fangirl for my entire life, I didn't even realize like how many possibilities were out there, essentially. So this is a new development for me. I only got this program, Scrivener, like however long ago it was, maybe 2 weeks now. Whenever I started streaming, essentially, it was around that time, like started streaming again. And so I used my own money, my own cold hard cash to purchase this, not sponsored. And yeah, if I end up not liking it, I'll also share that with you guys. But so far, I'm ashamed that I had not gotten this earlier, because I keep finding new features that I'm like, holy shit, Word could never. And so, yeah, I don't want to go on and on about it, but it's good. It's becoming my, like, singular second brain, if that makes sense. I'm going to end up putting everything on there. And as for things that you're meant to forget, that's quite funny. And it's a very real, valid concern. Like, sometimes this idea of keeping every memory, or like collecting, making sure to collect every single potential idea. If you're more of a ruminating type, that can be potentially problematic, you know? It almost strays into that like kind of compulsive behavior where it's like, I have to make sure that I write every single idea down, otherwise I'll forget it and it'll be the worst thing I've ever done. You know, like, that is a real concern. And I don't really have a good answer for that, you know? Because I still struggle with that. And so, as you can tell by the fucking, how many notes was it? Like 1,100 notes and like 800 voice notes. The weight of the world, essentially, yeah. And so, I'm sorry to be so useless in that regard, but I always defer back to that idea of being mindful, you know? When all else fails and you don't really have a good answer for yourself, just see if you can connect back to your own axioms, the things that mean the most to you, and try and form some thread of connection there. Drinking helps. You guys are funny. Yeah, so you could just like have a 3-day like drug and alcohol bender. That could also help. But besides that, for me, it's just about walking that middle road, which is hard. I tend to sway, like oscillate sometimes between extremes. But yeah, Everything in moderation, including moderation, from the late great Oscar Wilde. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, Scrivener absolutely does mog word, like literally in every single way. So I will at some point give you guys a tour of the program as I get more like used to it, because I still have only scratched the surface like of what it can actually do. And so even I'm still figuring things out and kind of getting the lay of the land. But when I feel like I'm settled into it, I'll show you guys and you'll notice, you'll see like exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah. Let's see. The fox. Oh god. Where are the other... Oh yeah. If you want to see more doodlebobs like that, there's some in the Discord. And they're way worse, if that's even possible. God damn. So yeah, Aphantasia is quite interesting. Do you guys hear your own internal thoughts? Like, do you have an internal monologue? Or is it just kind of like pictures and emotions and stuff? When you read, for instance, in your own head, is it like someone's... Is it a voice? Is it your voice? Is it someone else's voice? Morgan Freeman's? Because for me, it's like a version of my own voice, but I could transform it into anyone else's if I know what it sounds like. And I quite like that, you know? I like that ability. And to know that there are some people who just have silence there. Interesting. Yeah, the Doodlebob section, you guys should absolutely check it out. Here's a link to any of our new friends. If you want to check it out. Yeah, so Sea Locker, you don't have an internal monologue? That's quite interesting. Trust me, I mean, it can get annoying. Like, if you have a song stuck in your head, for instance, or if you can't stop thinking, you're just like, oh, I really want to go to sleep, but like, oh, what about that interaction I had today with that really cute cashier? I can't believe I said that really stupid thing. Like, they're going to think I'm so weird. It's like, shut up. You know? Literally. The amount of times... Oh, yeah, this is another meme, by the way. Like, inside joke meme. You know the shut up from Harry Potter? From Prisoner of Azkaban? Where he says shut up to his aunt Madge or whatever her name is? Yeah, that's another meme. Sometimes you might catch me saying that. It's not directed at you guys. It's just funny to say. Yeah, that idea of having to say things out loud is what my friend, like, experiences too. He hears nothing in his mind. Not music, not internal monologue. When he's reading, it's just silent in there. Yeah, where she inflates, that's right. And he's like, shut up. Shut up. Sorry. And so if he wants to, sometimes if he wants to like think out something really deeply, he actually has to say it out loud and sometimes even respond to himself, which is quite funny. It's like, sometimes I'll catch him being like, to no one, oh, you know what I mean? Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, who are you talking to? It's like, don't worry. And I'm like, I am worried. But, you know, it's just his method. I'm sure I look just as crazy when I'm like, when I'm writing by myself. And because I can't picture things, if I write like he tilted his head in confusion, sometimes I mirror that, like to kind of get a feel for what it would look like or be like. And so I'm sure I'm just as crazy looking. And it helps like get into the mind of a character. But yeah. Oh gosh. So I've been using Twitch so much that sometimes my thoughts are as if I'm telling an audience on camera. That's fascinating. That's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of like, I don't want to say the Truman Show. Like when, as kids, sometimes you'd be cooking like dinner or something, and it's almost as if you're in on your own cooking show. That's like an experience that I'm familiar with. But like, yeah, to have your thoughts be potentially heard by people. I wonder what that does, you know? Yeah, and it's happened to me before, actually. Not often, thankfully. But there have been times where I've been like on my own or with friends, and I'll be like, oh my God, chat, what do you think about this thing? And they're like, what the fuck? Stop that. I'm like, sorry, bad habit. But yeah, interesting. Because we take it for granted, like the the ways in which we think and the way our internal processes work, because we just assume that has to be how everyone works, right? But then when you get down to it, it's so different. And things that you thought were completely like across the board, ubiquitous, the same for everyone, is like, oh no, actually that may just be a you thing. And so how weird is that? Yeah, saying chat in public. Or like if I'm with one person, like a friend, and being like, oh my God, guys, this is crazy. It's like, it's just me. Who are you talking to? So yeah. I read with music to feel like I'm actually reading. Oh, that's nice. It's nice if you can actually read while something else is playing, because sometimes to me that's a little bit too much stimulation. Like I start focusing on the lyrics and then I get distracted from what I'm reading. So that's kind of a good thing, I guess, about not having that internal monologue. You don't get distracted. You just see the images and it's kind of like, yeah, a movie that's unfolding. Or would it be a movie? If you can't picture it, I don't know. Like a non-visual, non-auditory movie. What the hell would that be? Anyway, speaking of music, I have a new video. And I'd love to show you guys. Where is it? It is a relatively long one for my channel. And some of you may have heard it before. But anyway, sorry, my attention is split here. There we go. I don't need that anymore. I don't need that. This is what I was talking about earlier. The beat is not mine. So shout out to Ayo Moby. I found this beat on Veloco, an app. So if you're wondering, please send lots of love to this beat maker and producer. There's like details in the description box. This is what I was doing this morning. And yeah, I'm just basically gonna sit here and hopefully you guys enjoy. Levels, levels, levels. Is it loud enough? And that's me.
Hey, yo, Moby, you going crazy. The nights get long, this heartache burns, and all I'm thinking, are you with her? I'm all alone, with nothing on, and I'm just thinking, are you still gone? We could be, we could be, we could be, we could be, we could be. We could be something, something, oh. We could be something. We could be something. We could be. Hey, yo, Moby, you going crazy. The nights get long, and I'm untouched, and I'm just thinking, are you in love? All alone, become undone, and are you thinking that she's the one? We could be, 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 we could be something, something, oh. We could be, 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 we could be something, something, oh. Hey, yo, Moby, you going crazy. Are you touching her like? Are you touching me? Are you kissing her right? could be. We could be, we could be. We could be, we could be something.
There it is. And all great questions in the chat. Hopefully I can answer them all. I knew the auto-tune wouldn't be to everyone's taste. And that's something I concede. If you'd like to hear my kind of just natural voice, there's heaps of videos here where I'm just singing without effects. Club Cherry channel, my channel. And this one in particular, this song, with the app itself, it's kind of like an auto-tune app. There used to be one ages and ages ago, I think it was like the T-Pain app or something like that, where people would like put effects on their voices and like, yeah, make these little songs. It's similar to that. And I thought, let's just try it, see how it sounds. And so I could probably remake this if I had someone to help me produce without any effects at all. But there is something about the, I don't know what the word is, the longing, the somberness of the actual lyrics that maybe lend themselves to a bit of artifice in that way. Like, it's unsteady, it's unsure of itself, it's got that insecure feeling. And so to be masked or hidden, or in some way like couched by like autotune or whatever effects there are, it seemed thematic. And so I didn't make this beat. I'm definitely not that good. But Ayo Mobi, who is shouted out in the song, is the producer. And so, yeah. In terms of what a music video would look like, I have no idea. It's a good question. Like a nighttime kind of aesthetic, maybe in the car, looking out the window all sad. Yeah, weekend vibes. And actually with this picture, there was like, I don't know why I even took this. But there's something about it that seemed like it was telling a story. And I can't quite remember, but I don't think I was even wearing any makeup. Like, this was the middle of the night. But that I don't know, flush, I thought was compelling and evocative. So I was just drawn to it. And there's like, yeah, that close up, you're alone, kind of just yearning, thinking of someone. So, sorry, gets contemplative. And I could, yeah, I wonder, we could be. It feels too empty with just one voice. I took this photo, yeah. I don't remember why. Maybe it was an accident. You know, like sometimes where you accidentally press, like you're trying to take a photo, you accidentally take a photo of yourself or like the other thing. It could be. We could be. Happy accident, yeah. But I think if I were to record this like properly, I would still probably have like maybe some reverb or like maybe some doubled up vocals, because it sounds just too, maybe that also works. It sounds too lonely on its own. Like, the nights get long, this heartache burns. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not powerful enough. And so I like the oomph that the extra effects give it. So to take the best of both worlds would be my ideal situation. But this is all I could really do on the app itself. It's just like auto-tune. That's kind of, I was like, well, all right, let's try it. And so, yeah. Also, it's not quite perfect, which is kind of cool. Like, you hear at times where the effect slips, or like it doesn't know how to translate my original vocal into the auto-tune version. So it's kind of, it like warbles or wavers. And I like that as well. In pursuit of imperfection as always. So yeah, but in general, the beat is so good. I was like, how could I leave that beat alone? I think Ayo Mobi's pretty famous on that app. I'm not quite sure. because I don't really use the app anymore, and even when I did use it, I was just like scrolling through the songs. It's not like I was really using it as a social media. And so yeah, it's kind of like this diamond in the rough. It's like I have to make something with it. It was kind of like one of those instances where the beat itself was so good, the melody was already there. You know, I barely had to do anything. And so yeah, the unsteadiness. And even the lyrics, I'm pretty sure that first little bit was like a first take. And you can hear it because the chorus sounds different to the rest of them, as in like the melody and the rhythm. And so after that, I was like, oh yeah, I like that. Let me go and kind of write something down solidly and come back to it. And then right at the end, I think there's a different take there as well. We could be something. So, interesting. Yeah, maybe I have to jump in the studio. We'll see. Oh gosh. If any producers are out there, hit me up, you know? And oh yeah, the two different lyrics. It's because I couldn't decide. I thought they were both cool ideas, like "Are you in love?" or "Of you in love?" So thank you, C Locket. I was like, why not have both? You know, instead of having to choose, or is always the correct option. I'll show you what I mean here. There. Of you with her or are you with her? So. I'm thinking you with her. My timer, guys. Okay. I have to change the clothes. Maybe I'll just play this again and you guys can hopefully enjoy. Because I'll probably be this long. So let me get rid of my face. Enjoy.
You going crazy. The nights get long, this heartache burns, and all I'm thinking, are you with her? I'm all alone, with nothing on, and I'm just thinking, are you still gone? We could be, we could be, we could be, we could be, we could be. We could be something, something, oh. We could be something. We could be something. We could be, we could be, we could be. We could be, we could be, we could. Hey, yo, Moby, you going crazy. The nights get long, and I'm untouched, and I'm just thinking, are you in love? All alone, I come undone, and are you thinking that she's the one? We could be, 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 we could be something, something. Oh, we could be, 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 we could be something, something. Oh.
We could, guys. We really could. Wonder if I can harmonize or if it'll sound horrible. Hey, Moby, you going crazy.
Are you touching her like? Are you touching? Are you kissing her like? Are you kissing? Are you touching her like? Are you touching? Are you kissing her like? Are you kissing?
That wasn't even really harmonizing, but
We could be, we could be, we could be, we could be something, something. We could be, we could be. We could be, we could be. We could be something.
The clothes did survive. Yes, they did. I actually put in another load of washing as well, because we're getting shit done today, guys. We could be something. Yeah, I wonder what it would sound like actually fully produced. I saw you mentioned Me Too as well, Sea Locket. That one's quite special to me because I made that entirely on my own. Like, every single bit of that. Where is it? Man, we've made a bunch of shit together, haven't we? Did I pause it? I think I did. Is there a search function? Me Too? There it is. I made... Wait, did I make every inch of that? I might be thinking of a different one. Oh yeah, I had help with this one. But... Excuse me. The one I was thinking of, which is also a... one of my favorites, which I made entirely on my own, is... Where is it? A couple of these down here, Too Much. Stranger. The girl's voice is raw. I'll take that as a compliment. This is another one of my favorites. Quiet. Sorry about the levels.
Ooh, it's automatic. Ooh, I know it's tragic, but I'm wondering if you want me to. I've been dreaming of your body. Nobody can stop me, and I'm wondering if you want me to.
Ooh, it's automatic. Ooh, I know it's tragic, but I'm wondering if you want me to. Is not the most erotic portion of a body where the garment gapes. In perversion, which is the realm of textual pleasure, there are no erogenous zones, a foolish expression. Besides, it is intermittence, as psychoanalysis has so rightly stated, which is erotic. The intermittence of skin flashing between two articles of clothing, trousers and sweater, between the two edges, the open-necked shirt, the glove and the sleeve. It is this flash itself which seduces. Nobody can stop me, and I'm here if you want me to. Ooh, it's automatic. Ooh, I know it's tragic, but I'm wondering if you want me to. Dreaming of your body. Nobody can stop me, and I'm wondering if you want me to. Ooh, it's automatic. Ooh, I know it's tragic, but I'm wondering if you want me to. That's a good one. I like that one. And I was mistaken. I didn't make this one entirely on my own. I made the video and the melody and stuff, but the beat was from a friend. Which one was I thinking of? Most of these, if they're guitar or ukulele, it is just me, like recording some shoddy thing on my phone. Oh yes, In the Club, that's right. In the Club and Groove for Sure. Those two, and Start It. I made those in FL Studio. So it was like an actual program. And a couple others. The rest aren't really programmed per se, they're just me strumming away. So that's why these ones feel different. Because it's like, oh, me sitting in the producer chair, you know? Yeah, that one was a bit more calm. I agree. But still, it's got like this, something simpering little quality to it. And then some of these I've made in collaboration as well. So this one I made by myself. Which you can probably tell. You wanna know what I got was cooking in the club, it's true. Still haven't quite figured out, yeah, levels. I don't know what I'd put here. Different verse. So I could put the same thing, but yeah. Butterflies were a sticker, I think, in CapCut. So they're just fluttering away, doing their own thing. And it was nice to actually have, like, I don't know, something entirely my own, unfinished, of course, and just post it. You know, like, yeah, this is where I'm at. Doesn't have to be perfect. Someone could even take this and fill in the empty space. So that was nice. As for my own microphone, for the more professional ones, I tried to use this mic, but a lot of them, when they're just like, not a cappella, acoustic, I just use my iPhone. So you can usually tell. This is another one that I made. And that's me. A lot of the times the lyrics is just like a vessel for the melody. Something kind of that repeats, hopefully not in an annoying way, but more like in a hypnotic way, if that makes sense. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, my hair in this one is so different. It's like ombre, and with the angle and the glasses and stuff, it's hard to tell that it's me, but yeah. It's me in my, think she's a model era. From all of your Club Cherry songs, which one would you like to fully extend? I can't tell. I mean, there's one that did really well randomly, but I don't know why exactly. Like this one. Maybe there's just a combination of the thumbnail and the title and everything that took people by surprise, but maybe that one. It's a really quick ukulele ditty. So maybe that one. And this is the last one that I think I also use FL for, but there's a couple of them thrown in there. This is just off the top of my head. This is an early one. That's my arm as well, just all scribbled on. Yeah, really simplistic. You can tell it's one of those I'm just figuring this out type beat. When I listen to this, I think of myself not knowing how to quite use all the settings, but trying them out. As for music video, I have no clue. Literally. But anyway. Yeah, this is my channel. You guys are welcome to check it out if you haven't already. And uploads every single Thursday, you know, like since the beginning, without fail, even if it's at a random time, like, yeah, if it just skirts by. Every single Thursday, that's right, baby. So, yeah. What I wanted to do now, actually, since I'm kind of in a watching mood, we've been talking about it for a while, but I wanted to watch that extended lecture on Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and etc., which I know might not be everyone's cup of tea. But I think, there's probably going to be something that anyone can glean from it, even if you don't like Lord of the Rings as much as I do. So I have to find the link. Pardon me. I hope Discord does not crash my computer again. But yeah, we'll see how we go. If it's not really the vibe, we can always switch to something else. But I also did promise. I'm a lady of my word. Shit, where is it? Be closer, kiss me harder. There it is. Hopefully Melodies will be able to watch this back if he can't make it. Oh no, I didn't do a fit check today. I'll show you guys before we get started. Here. My shirt. And jeans. Really simple. And this necklace that my friend made me. T-pose. What is it? Pose 28? What was it called? Full rotation. Pose 28. We eating good tonight type beat. Hopefully that was in focus. And yeah, like I said, this is my brother's shirt, I believe, that he either forgot to take or left here before. So a 720. I'll just keep turning. Like the rest of the stream, I'll just keep turning. It is a great shirt. I think, yeah, when he wore it out once, like we got stopped multiple times. People being like, "What? Where'd you get that?" And so, does it say? I can't read that. Can anyone read that? Later. Apparently based on Pink Sunday painting. Sorry, I'm just double checking this so I'm not giving out fake news. It does look a bit like that, but I don't know if that's... Does anyone know what painting this is based on? And yeah, it does say your mom. It says your mom. Oh, that's funny. All right. We're finally doing it, guys. We are getting academic. And this is purely for my own pleasure, to be honest. But hopefully you get something out of it too. So you can fall asleep if you want. That's fine. It's Lord of the Rings, How to Read J.R.R. Tolkien. And so tell me if it's too loud or too quiet. I'm going to also double check. Once it starts.
It's been about 20 years since the last time I was at CMU, and it's been longer than that since I was in Ween Hall, where I had freshman calculus. I was walking around campus today, and I was walking through Baker Hall of the slanting floors, and I thought, well, I'm back. So tonight I'm going to be talking about how to read Tolkien, and you might be wondering why such a topic needs a how-to, since well over 100 million people have read Tolkien over the past 50 years, and they seem to be doing quite all right without me or the advice of any professor, or at least any professor that's not named Tolkien. But if Tolkien is easy to read, and he must be, because his work is pop culture, not literature, we have to ask why so many critics misread him, and so hilariously. My favorite being the anonymous, and lucky for him, critic from the Times Literary Supplement who wrote, "This is not a work that many adults will read right through more than once."
The voice.
Which, first of all, weird, What kind of criterion is that? And second of all, like, wow, talk about epic fail in prediction, because he's writing about the Lord of the Rings, which is probably the one 20th century book that people do read over and over again. Well, I'm also Goodnight Moon, but they're kind of different. Also, there's a number of important and powerful critics, including that Mr. Anonymous, but also Patricia Meyer-Spax, Solomon Rushdie, Catherine Stimpson, and
He's naming and shaming,
Bunny Wilson, who, even if they are dead, apparently desperately need a how-to on reading Tolkien because they are doing it wrong. And one of the wrong things they do, and many other people do as well, is to stampede right to the question, why is Tolkien so popular? Because the answers to that question usually take a sharp turn at shallow politics and then make a beeline right for pop sociology. And since I find both of those places less congenial than Mordor, I won't be trying to do that. And therefore, I won't be telling you directly why Tolkien is so popular. Instead, I'm going to explain in part why Tolkien's work has the particular effects on readers that it does. And then you can decide if that has anything to do with its popularity.
Also, if you guys have read Lord of the Rings or any other of Tolkien's work, I want to know from you, why do you think it's popular? Like, why did it, how did it make you feel and why? So, feel free to share.
Popularity. But before I go further, I want to tell a story. It's about Professor Peggy Knapp, who is in part responsible for my becoming a medievalist. Now,
that's a thing.
In order to tell the story, I have to set things up a little, because the story relies on the audience having a bit of information about the strange cultural practices of the distant past, specifically the process of course registration at Carnegie Mellon in the 1980s. And yes, there is nothing more exciting than that. Here's how it was. Way back then, things that are now done seamlessly online were done physically, in person, with pencil
that's crazy.
and paper, even at CMU. I know, I'm not making this up. To make sure you actually got the classes you wanted, you camped out overnight in the academic buildings. And in order to be first in the registration line, you slept there. Really, with sleeping bags and with sports bottles filled with vodka mixed with Tang. Or I heard some people did that. Once, so after you'd signed up for your openings then, you had to meet with your advisor and get your classes approved. And this is the key point. Your advisor signed your course sheet and handed it in. You didn't get the course sheet back.
That's crazy.
You'll see why in a minute. I think it's safe to say that the specifics of the registration process at Carnegie Mellon in 1989 are not known by the current students, and they're probably hardly remembered among the faculty. And be honest, they don't keep me up all night reminiscing either. But in another 50 to 60 years, when all the people my age are dead, the knowledge will be entirely lost. Trivial social procedures often don't get recorded. Right? We have no idea how the Vikings organized lining up for battle or for getting into their ships. Though it's kind of fun to imagine, like, Ragnar is cutting me. So now you have, and the point is this, if you don't know the registration process, then my story loses something. But so now that you have the cultural background, here's the story. It was the end of the first semester of my senior year. And I saw from the schedule, which is printed on paper, by the way, that Professor Knapp was going to be teaching a Chaucer class that met at 8:30 a.m. Now, I haven't had an 8:30 a.m. class since freshman calculus, and I didn't go to that very much. So thinking that as a second semester senior, I was going to need my sleep, I didn't sign up for Chaucer. I didn't put it on my registration form. I just took what I needed to graduate, though I did camp out in Baker Hall so I could get into Sharon Dilworth's writing workshop. And if I remember correctly, Professor Margot Livesey, who's now a famous novelist, had to step over my sleeping bag to get into her office that morning. Later, I brought my form to Professor Knapp, and she said, "This looks reasonable," she said, "and it fulfills all your requirements for graduation, but you missed my Chaucer class." There was a pause. "I don't see a time conflict." I said, Yeah,
I just don't want to
go. There's no conflict, but it's my second semester senior year. And there was a long pause. And then Professor Knapp said, Chaucer would be a good class for you. No, I'm sure it would be, but it's an 8:30 a.m. class, and I'm a second semester senior. There was another long pause. "I'll just add it to your form." This time there was a long pause by me. Don't worry, you'll pick up the Middle English. But I stopped because I might have been lazy, but I wasn't stupid. And that was how I ended up with an 8:30 a.m. class the second semester senior year. And it turned out to be the best single class I ever took at Carnegie Mellon. And it prepared me so well for graduate school in medieval studies that even though I had a couple-year digression into getting degrees in journalism and creative writing, when I did figure out I wanted to be a medievalist, I was still ahead of all the other students in my seminar.
So medievalism, like, you can be a medievalist. That's fucking crazy and pretty cool. Like, what does that entail? I guess giving lectures and sharing that knowledge with people. But besides that, day to day, you can just be an expert in medieval shit. That's fucking cool. And I think it's quite endearing and quite, like, quite common actually, where a student doesn't even, like, they didn't even necessarily want to do the thing that ends up becoming their later passion. It's like, yeah, we've all been there. And see, Lockett, as for, oh yeah, when you read The Hobbit, right? You liked how detailed it was. I totally get that. Like, it's both lush and restrained at the same time, like The Lord of the Rings, which is quite, like, that is crazy and difficult to do. And so, yeah, nothing's too impossible type beat. Yeah, also that feeling of hope and, like, oh, you know, that idea of characters being good and noble, it's inspiring, definitely. I've also experienced, yeah, that idea of, like, trying something that you don't necessarily think you'll like, but then it ends up consuming your entire life multiple times.
Point to this story and all this setup, and it's not just a long way to go to praise Professor Knapp, who, as the story shows, wasn't just an amazing teacher, but also a wise advisor, which is, by the way, why I dedicated this book, Tradition and Influence in Anglo-Saxon Literature,
you wrote
to
a
her
book.
And to my two
right,
other
I guess
great
that's
teachers,
what you do with
John Foley and Alan
your
Franson.
knowledge.
Now, the story is related to my topic tonight in trying to explain how to read Tolkien. As I learned from Professor Knapp, a good medieval sermon, like The Pardoner's Tale, needs an exemplum. It needs a little story that dramatizes some of the important ideas. So now, I want you to imagine someone reading the story I just told 500 or 1,000 years from now and trying to figure it out. And by the story, I mean the way I told the story back in 1989 over in the dining room at Phi Kappa Theta, where I was surely mocked for being a wimp and giving in to my advisor. But if you left out all that setup about the registration process, so centuries in the future, it should be easy to figure out the basic information, right? The advisor who knows better pressures the lazy student into doing the right thing. And only well after the fact does the student realize how right the advisor was. You get the theme. It's the triumph of wisdom, right? But there's also a character-driven level of the story where the humor arises from the soft-spoken and kindly advisor nevertheless being an unflinching badass and forcing the more expressive or opinionated or from New Jersey student to bend to her will without actually saying anything. So the point being that future readers will get something from the local context, but they won't get the social, technological, and procedural writing of the story, where Professor Knapp's power came from, how both parties knew exactly what that power was, and how the hearers of the story over at 1069 Morewood Avenue knew the minute that I said, I'll just add it to your form, that fate was fully determined.
Interesting.
Those future readers might get a sense of how the whole thing worked. They might have some general idea that there was a joke that they were missing, but they wouldn't know all that context. And in summary, there's a difference between what the characters in the story know and what the reader of the story knows. And at this point, I'm guessing every single English major here is thinking, yes, drought, this is a little thing called irony. Maybe you've heard of it. But oh, straw student into whose mouth I just put those words. You've got it backwards. Because normal irony, as I learned from Professor Knapp, comes when the reader of the story knows more than the characters. So when our protagonists go out and they book their honeymoon cruise on this beautiful new cruise ship, we shake our heads. We readers know something that the characters don't. And there's always the omnipresent irony that the readers know that we're reading a book with a certain title and a certain number of pages left till the end, while the characters,
holy shit,
usually...
As we're watching, I'm realizing, like, this is crazy. It's crazy that this is free. Like, we're 10 minutes in, and this guy is talking about stuff that usually takes, like, multiple years, or at the very least multiple classes in university to start, like, broaching. Fuck. It's really good. Quite heady. Hopefully legible and entertaining to people, you know, if you aren't really a Tolkien fan. But this applies to writing in general and story writing and, like, context. I'm, like, amazed that this guy's going so in depth into these topics, because this is pulling from multiple different disciplines as well. It's got a good flow. Good. Shit, I'm like... I should be taking notes.
usually don't have that information. Let's be really technical for a moment and say that in every story, in every human interaction, there's an epistemic regime, a particular distribution of knowledge. In my little story, if it's read 1,000 years in the future, the normal epistemic regime is inverted. The characters know stuff, the reader doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, how many minutes into this lecture I get to the Lord of the Rings? In J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, the epistemic regime is the same as the one I've created for my little story. The characters know a fair bit more than the readers do because they live in Middle-earth while we live in Pittsburgh.
Mm.
And this epistemic regime means that things that are unknown to the reader are going to be obvious to the characters. We have no idea where the Blue Mountains are.
That's
or
fucking
who
crazy.
Elrond is. But the characters know these things, and they take them for granted. And so they will refer to them utterly casually. And that dynamic...
And I think that's why it feels so lived in. Oh, fuck, that's such a... Oh, okay. Sorry. I just have to sit here and process that for a second, because yes, that makes total sense. The characters know more than the reader. And it shows in their quite casual way of bringing up something for the first time that we've never heard of. This is helpful. That was something I want to try in my own writing a bit more as well. I started doing that only recently, I think. We're peering into a world through a tiny window. That's exactly right. Because I think last time we talked about this, I did say how it felt less like Tolkien was writing and more like he was documenting something that he already knew, like something he had witnessed somewhere else. And so, yeah. Well, I wonder how much that was intentional, you know, or how much of it was circumstantial. And this guy will probably end up talking about it, so.
Will naturalize many of the things about Middle-earth that are otherwise distant and different from our world. No one boggles at the existence of a glowing sword or a magic ring. So far, so good. It's a standard technique of fantasy and science fiction. It goes back a ways before Tolkien. But wait, there's more. Not all the characters know everything about their own world. Most importantly, the hobbits, who've spent their whole lives in the insular bucolic Shire, don't know much at all. Frodo has chatted with some travelers, he's looked at some maps, but he's never been anywhere. And he's the most cosmopolitan hobbit in the whole Shire. The others are pretty much but ignorant of the outside world's geography, history, and culture. But the story is focalized through the hobbits. For pretty much the entire Fellowship of the Ring, most of the Two Towers, and all of the Return of the King, Tolkien sticks to the point of view of the various hobbits. There's only one major exception, and that's at the beginning of the Two Towers, when Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are chasing the orcs who have captured Merry and Pippin. And they're also worrying about what's happened to Frodo and Sam. They've seen footprints, they've seen a missing boat, but they're not 100% sure. A hobbit point of view at that point would ruin the suspense. So instead, we get Gimli's point of view. Gimli! And that leads us to a very useful generalization about point of view in The Lord of the Rings, which I think we can call the least knowledgeable character hypothesis.
Okay.
In any given scene, Tolkien uses the point of view of the least knowledgeable character in that scene. How accurate is the LKC generalization? Well, it's pretty accurate. In the few places where Tolkien tells the story through an omniscient narrator, or he gives a point of view of seemingly knowledgeable characters like Aragorn at the very beginning of The Two Towers, or Gandalf at the beginning of Book 2 of The Fellowship of the Ring, it turns out that the least knowledgeable character is generally unconscious, occasionally asleep, sometimes absent.
That's so interesting. And I wonder what implication that has for modern stories. And welcome in, guys, by the way, to some of our friends joining us. I hope this isn't too boring. And that the pausing is okay. Because I think I literally just need time to synthesize what this very astute lecturer is saying. And I totally agree with, that sense of older stories. Like, we're just getting a tiny glimpse into, like, kind of a blip in this massive history. And I haven't finished the trilogy, I should say. I'm almost finished with the first book, the first 2 volumes. And, like, it's just that sense of, like, oh, there's more here. Like, he hasn't just drawn in exactly what he needs to for you guys to read the scene. He's also painted out this entire world, and it shows, you know? I think it also does, it adds to the rereadability. Because you go back and you're like, oh, actually, now I know what that means. I can kind of see this from a different point of view. And that's really fantastic. Because, like, in terms of literature, it's already a relatively dying medium, I suppose, in the sense that, you know, we've moved on to TV and video games, and I guess it's seen as kind of boring now. So if you want to, like, if you can make people want to not just read your work once, but again, then you're doing something right. And so the least knowledgeable perspective hypothesis is interesting. I think often I'm writing stories with only 1 or 2 characters. Yeah, interesting. Sorry, we'll keep going.
The view is of that of a generally knowledgeable character in the particular scenes. Even that character doesn't know something that's focal. Gandalf doesn't know how Frodo's going to come out from under the Morgul knife spell, if he's going to be partially invisible like a glass filled with clear light. Aragorn doesn't know where the rest of the company is. Now, let's see how that least knowledgeable character point of view interacts with the epistemic regime. The characters know more than the readers do. But inside the story, the other characters know more than the point of view character. What happens then is that the point of view characters have multiple occasions to learn things about the world in which they're in. And as they learn, the reader will learn the same information at the same time. So when Frodo says of Saruman, "Who is he? I have never heard of him before," and Gandalf answers, somewhat elliptically, the character Frodo and the reader both simultaneously learn about Saruman. They learn about him in the same way. They have to piece together Gandalf's rather opaque statements that Saruman is one of the wise, with a capital W, and that he's part of Gandalf's order, with a capital O, and that he has a PhD in ring lore, and so forth. But you notice, even in that particular scene, Tolkien neatly avoids the dreaded Chapter 2, the Treatise of Tedium, which is so common in fantasy literature. If you've ever read fantasy or tried to write fantasy, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Chapter 1 has an exciting battle and a black-cloaked demon shows up and so forth. And then in Chapter 2 you get, "Now I will give you a summary of the physics, geology, geography, mythology, religion, history, social structure, technology, and customs of my imagined world." George R.R. Martin, I am looking at you.
Ooh, name drop.
It's, by the way, very hard to avoid writing a treatise of tedium, because you need to get this information out to your readers, right? If your Dark Lord's major weakness is going to be the crimson gauntlets of Fenway Park, then you need to work that information into the story somehow. There's some of this in the Shadow of the Past, but that chapter is 83% less boring than most Chapter 2 treatises, I'm sure, because Tolkien imparts the information through this conversation with Gandalf who lectures surprisingly little. Frodo has to drag the information out of him, and that information is incomplete, it's fragmentary. Gandalf sometimes says he doesn't know, other times he refuses to tell things that he knows which are actually relevant. And the reader and the character experience the same thing at the same time, learning, which is a fundamentally different reading experience than the other emotions or sensations that can be invoked by literature.
Interesting.
That's a pretty extreme assertion, so maybe I better argue for it. Here's the difference between learning and other reading experiences. When we read about a character feeling sadness, we can feel sad. But despite the ability of art to invoke feelings in us, the cognitive experience is not the same as that which the character has. When we read about a character being sad, we feel sadness for the character, but we're not experiencing the same sadness as the character who is sad about what's ever happening to him or her, not sad about what's being read. That's fundamentally different. And so I feel reasonably safe in saying that very few other readers are having the same experience at the same time as Frodo, standing inside a volcano, getting his finger bitten by Gollum. But when a character learns, and you learn at the same time, you are experiencing what that character's experiencing.
That's interesting. So I think the argument being made here is like the difference between a sympathetic response and an empathetic response. So for instance, you can read about someone being sad, and yeah, that could be also quite saddening to you, but the difference fundamentally is that you're not going through the same thing, you know? But if someone's learning and you're also learning, that's like a merging of experiences to the point where you almost can't get any closer to the actual character in that moment. That's profoundly connecting in a weird way. Like, I don't know if there's actually any other thing, like any other verb, where that can happen. Like that total merging. At least off the top of my head. Maybe if someone's reading? Pity versus relating. Yeah, that's a really good point. So interesting. I'm sure that's not totally, like, what's the word? Singular to Tolkien, though. I mean, learning in general is quite a prevalent topic in books, in stories in general. I wonder maybe if it's just something that shows up here more than maybe other stories. Very cool, though. Yeah, new feelings through reading, that's right. As for the premise of this channel, it's a little bit of everything. A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Right now, it's more of an academic or like adjacently academic time. Because, yeah, I've been meaning to get to this for ages, so I'm glad to indulge finally. But sympathetic versus empathetic, interesting.
Experiencing the same mental processes that would be taking place in the character are taking place in you. There's still mediation because there's always mediation since we're reading while the character is being
Hopefully
told
it's
by
not
a
too
wizard.
quiet, by the way.
But the cognitive experience of learning is fundamentally alike. Now, if you interview or survey readers of The Lord of the Rings, you find some really consistent strands of discussion. The most significant of these is a high percentage of readers report that reading The Lord of the Rings is an experience, that it's qualitatively different than other books that they've read and loved. Even the critic Edmund Bunny Wilson recognized this quality in The Lord of the Rings, I think, although he attributed it to the book being long.
Okay.
That's all he had. And note, by the way, that The Lord of the Rings doesn't require the cognitive investment that you need to put into James Joyce's Ulysses, or into Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury, or into Toni Morrison's Beloved. The language is clear and straightforward. You always know where you are in time and space, and yet the books are an experience. And they're an experience in part because the epistemic regime and the least knowledgeable character point of view contribute to the reader's learning at the same time as the characters, producing this similarity of experience. But that's not all. The next piece of the puzzle contributes to this phenomenological quality. Under an epistemic regime in which the characters know stuff that the reader doesn't, characters are going to refer to things in their own culture in, as we've noted, an entirely casual, offhand way. For instance, Aragorn says of Gandalf, he is surer of finding the way home in a blind night than the cats of Queen Beruthiel. Because none of the characters react with a, what you talking about, Strider? Or, Queen who? Instead, we are given the impression that everybody in the company knows who Queen Beruthiel is. There's this world full of history and culture that surrounds the characters. And by the way, how can it be that there is no website, the lolcats of Queen Beruthiel? It would combine pictures of cats and Tolkien, and yet it doesn't exist. The internet has failed. By the way, someone should set this up, but cultural knowledge that speakers assume to be widespread gets referenced all the time in conversational, journalistic, literary discourse, and we just don't notice it because most of the time it works so well. The reference just gives us information. And by the way, people don't use references just to seem clever either, though that's undoubtedly part of the pleasure. References are useful. They communicate more information than they themselves contain. This may seem to violate principles of Shannon-Weaver information theory, but it doesn't. Because what's happening when a reference works is that a whole lot of information that's previously passed into the mind
memes are a great example.
Is being invoked by a very small reference. Let's say I make a mistake and go, "Doe!" All I did was utter a monosyllable. But if you're part of the same culture, then that monosyllable invoked information that you had already received and put into your minds. This principle in oral traditional studies is called communicative economy. The use of references is just part of regular discourse. We don't notice them very much, but when they don't work, they stand out. And that's where the cats of Queen Beruthiel comes in. For the characters, it's just an ordinary...
We do this all the time, by the way. Like, even on this channel. Like, Sea Locket earlier, you said TBD. That is a reference that, like, well, if you know, you know type beat. But, like, let's say that chat log was to be read out to people 100 years into the future. Be like, what? What does that mean? And yet, here, like, it doesn't even need an explanation. And so, yeah, that's interesting. It really is that case of, like, something being so obvious to us that it doesn't seem to require explanation. Yeah, like a little bit of a code. But the thing is, it holds like a whole backstory to it, you know? Like that would probably require quite a long time to explain. Same thing can be said about, I guess, The Lord of the Rings. I think that's what the argument is here, and I would agree. Interesting. Yeah, so like, as I'm thinking, I'm wondering how often I do that in my own work. And the answer, I think, is not enough. But it doesn't, like, it shouldn't be gratuitous, you know, especially if it's not really serving any purpose. But in terms of creating an actual world that feels lived in, that's a really good way to do it. Have people reference things that, yeah, like they wouldn't bother explaining because they all know what it is. Like I wouldn't explain to you guys, for instance, what an emote is. But if I met someone like from the medieval times, I'd probably have to do a lot of explaining. Like, interesting. It is, yeah. It's a card, for sure. Sorry. It's a thinking kind of stream. Again, I'm surprised this is just free online because this is so... It's quite rich and pulling from a bunch of different places. Different disciplines, different schools of thought. I approve. My friend Bruce had to recently explain the word of Twitch, the world of Twitch to them. Really? That's interesting. That's almost like a chapter in a book where the character and the reader learn something at the same time. The only time I think I did something similar in my own work was when Ada and Odin were talking about what Mars said. And she's like, when did he say that? The after party? And so it's implied through just those words that they had a party all together. An after party usually means like something that happens, you know, kind of after a big event. So something more intimate. But I can't think of any other time I did that. Yeah, being conscious of that and finding a way to help others learn is really cool. It's like in a writer's way, like you can really do a lot with quite few words. Yeah, the implications. I'm not being as articulate as this lecturer. But yeah, you can use like their prior knowledge, even the gaps in their prior knowledge, to imply some level of closeness or event without having to just straight up be like, you know, sorry, I was going to say, like, they want each other really bad, or they had a party and some shit went down. Because, like, sometimes that direct explanation can take some of the magic out of it. Yeah, and then fill in the gaps with your own knowledge. I didn't say what the after party was like, who else was there, and why it was even happening. But you can imagine, right? And so sometimes that's all that needs to be said, and yet it creates some level of depth and complexity to these characters. So it's not just like they kind of just appeared in this white void for this exact story. Yeah, insider references. That's right. They add intrigue, but you definitely don't want to overdo it. I think at that point, it feels like maybe showing off, or like you're simply doing it to feel like Tolkien, you know? So frustratingly, as with most things, there's a fine line, and it takes a masterful kind of approach, not too light, but not too heavy. And so, yeah. I wonder, like, I hope this isn't all too obvious to you guys, by the way, as we go through this video. Because, of course, as soon as this guy says this stuff, I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. And that just speaks to his, like, quite his adeptness at, like, conveying a message or an idea when something suddenly becomes so obvious. But I haven't really thought of this before. Like, in terms of what the readers know versus what the characters know, and the varying levels of completeness of that knowledge. Almost like layers, you know, there's a stratosphere of knowledge, and the little tricks that you can use to actually explain things without it just being an like exposition dump, you know, which, to be honest, I don't even necessarily mind those exposition dumps in stories. But yeah, obviously when there's a lot to explain, you don't just want to bang a reader's head with it, you know?
Reference. For the reader, instead of invoking of information about what the cats of Queen Bruthiel might possibly mean, you get this. You get a 404. The reference does exactly the opposite of what a regular reference does. Instead of communicating information efficiently, it highlights the failure of communication. Let's call those 404s broken references. And note that the extreme communicative economy for the participants in the culture means that there's no redundancy in the information, and therefore almost no information at all once the continuity of culture is broken. A broken reference emphasizes that the reader is not part of the same cultural world as the characters. And it emphasizes that that cultural world is rich and complex enough to have a whole pile of references which are now broken. Now, we're not done with broken references, but let's tie them in with the epistemic regime and the least knowledgeable character point of view. The characters know stuff that the reader doesn't. Apparently, who those damn cats are. The broken reference, so the broken reference can arise directly from that epistemic regime. However, that could work at cross purposes with the LKC, with the least knowledgeable character. A broken reference can distance the reader from the characters, but Tolkien had a clever solution to this problem. For example, at the eponymous Council of Elrond, Elrond says that by accepting the quest of the ring, Frodo has earned himself a seat among the great elf friends, including Hador and Húrin
I remember
and
this.
Beren himself. Now, Elrond may be annoying sometimes, and actually, he might be more annoying than the real Elrond, but he's not deliberately confusing here, since that would completely undercut his rhetorical purpose. He's instead speaking in an idiom that he expects to be understood by his interlocutors. He may be wrong, because he's 6,000 years old, and young hobbits these days with their attention spans and everything, but he's trying to communicate.
He's trying to give a compliment.
Although, as Hugo Weaving plays the character, Elrond has managed to get through 6,000 years without ever learning that just yelling at people and raising your eyebrow doesn't actually convince anyone, but I digress. Now, there
Hugo
are
Weaving
those
is
first
collateral
three names
damage.
in the list of elf friends are, at this point in the narrative, entirely unknown to the reader of The Lord of the Rings. And therefore, their connotations are unavailable. Even any denotations beyond some general idea, positive notion of an elf friend can only be interpreted in the local context. Because the character making the reference apparently also understands the backgrounds of the stories of Hador and Húrin and Túrin, and assumes that the readers do also, readers have to infer the existence of a rich cultural context outside that of the story. The overall effect, then, of the combination of the epistemic regime, the LKC point of view, and the appearance of broken references is to make the cognitive experience of the reader very much like that of the focal characters. Participants in the culture, but not the most knowledgeable, who are learning about their own world's history and culture in an organic way.
Yeah.
The way that we as children learn about our world, overhearing conversation, making connections, putting things together from messy data, rather than being given it all in a treatise of tedium or a long lecture on the history of the world. Now, this overall effect may go a bit further towards an explanation of why Tolkien's works seem qualitatively different, both from mainstream literature of the 20th century and the rest of the fantasy genre. Again, it's a cognitive experience analogous to being a child learning about its culture and its world, which also may explain another aspect of the phenomenology of The Lord of the Rings, that so many people link it to experiences of growth or initiation.
That makes sense.
As Gandalf notes, the hobbits have grown during the course of the story, and likewise readers feel as if they have an experience of development. I think it's the experience of learning, which is certainly much intertwined with childhood and growth and development. And now we go back and pick up the thread of broken references, because though they contribute to the experiential of The Lord of the Rings, that's not all they do. If you are a true Tolkien geek, then you already know that there is a fundamental difference between the cats of Queen Beruthiel and Elrond's list of elf friends. But just in case you're not a complete Tolkien geek,
Wait, should I guess why? I think it's because the names that Elrond listed, like, they've actually been written about, or like Tolkien wrote stories about them. I'm not sure. Yeah, organic is really the key word. It does feel organic. It's almost like things are unfolding naturally, as opposed to like, oh shit, I need to like tell the readers this thing, so let me just shove it into a place where it doesn't belong. It's like, this is where someone would naturally ask for clarification, or someone would reveal something of the world itself. It's not just shoehorned in. And Elrond in that moment is giving a compliment, quite a high compliment actually, because the people he lists are like very noble, brave characters. And so I'm not sure if that's the right answer for like why they're different, but that's my guess.
And the difference is that in 1954, when The Lord of the Rings was published, there was no reference anywhere in Tolkien's writings, published or unpublished, to the cats of Queen Beruthiel, while all of Elrond's elf friends
were written about.
Sounds like a name for a band. Like a really nerdy band, like They Might Be Giants, like Elrond's elf friends. But all of Elrond's super elf friends were in the unpublished Silmarillion material.
Right.
Tolkien had already written their stories. Now, from the point of view of the reader, this makes absolutely no difference at all. A broken reference is a broken reference. But for Tolkien himself, there's a distinction. What we can mark by calling Queen Beruthiel's cats, which would be a good name for a jazz quartet, by the way, a pseudo-reference. And Elrond's super elf friends is a broken reference. Now, surprisingly, almost all the references in The Lord of the Rings are broken rather than pseudo. Tolkien himself said it was just the cats of Queen Beruthiel and the otherwise unexplained 2 extra wizards that Saruman mentions on Orthanc. Everything else, according to Tolkien, as best I can tell, shows up in the Silmarillion material or in
Which
the
is fucking
appendices.
crazy. Like, how is that possible?
Now, Tolkien is not the first fantasy or science fiction writer to create pseudo-references, by the way. Jules Verne's cryptic manuscript by Arni Saknussemm in The Journey to the Center of the Earth, H.P. Lovecraft's Necronomicon, Robert Chambers's The King in Yellow, all of those are pseudo-references. And these guys are hardly the first to invent them. Mallory's French book, from which he claims he gets a lot of his Arthurian material, or Geoffrey of Monmouth's, my favorite.
Damn, this guy's
Liber
flexing right now.
Vitosissimus, the oldest book, where he claims he gets stuff that he's actually just making up. All of these are pseudo-references also. And maybe even Chaucer's Book of the Lion, which possibly, or maybe even probably, never existed.
I haven't read most of those,
The
just saying.
pseudo-reference is a way of authenticating the author's inventions, making them seem like they're part of a long tradition, which is a point we'll come back to. But in Tolkien's case, although the fake references weren't actually fake, the reader can't know that they are. But the existence of the references still has an effect. Because those pseudo-references all point to actual stories, they have, to use one of my favorite German words, a Zusammenhang, a hanging together, a subtle consistency. How do you know that there used to be more arches here? Well, when you've seen as many arches as I have, you can fill in the pattern, right? Tolkien's references fit some sort of subtle out-of-view pattern, and they hang together in a way that H.P. Lovecraft's or Stephen R. Donaldson or Terry Brooks' references don't. Readers can tell. A similar coherence of background gives Beowulf much of its particular quality of feeling historically true, or as Tolkien put it, taking place in the named lands of the North, even if it includes trolls, sea monsters, and a dragon. But what makes Beowulf similar to The Lord of the Rings, or more properly vice versa, is that none, and I mean absolutely none, of the references in Beowulf contradict with each other or with the few times that they appear in historical sources. The Beowulfian material, get this, doesn't even contradict itself when it shows up in later texts that do contradict each other. Let me explain what I mean by that. If we go through Beowulf and we reconstruct whatever we can from the hints and the allusions, we find that none of those stories are directly opposed to what shows up in the later sources.
No, I haven't read Beowulf.
Sometimes those give a fuller...
I haven't read Beowulf, so this is slightly more lost on me. But that idea of cohesion makes total sense. Like, having your references not just randomly contradict each other is a good place to start. Like, if you say, oh, there was once this great giant and it was the only giant that ever existed, but he got killed, and then later on someone else makes a reference about this other giant, like, that is world breaking, essentially, unless there's some explanation for it. So that idea of having references, whether they're broken references or not, like, make sense with each other, like exist nicely and not contradict, is totally essential. And the points about Beowulf is interesting, that even the later versions don't contradict each other. I probably need to be more learned to understand the significance of that. But like in Tolkien's work specifically, yeah, that makes total sense. Like, don't have differing pieces of information that cannot possibly exist together, unless that is the point and someone's lying or someone's mistaken. There's also a different point about that where Tolkien was kind of writing from different perspectives, and those perspectives may potentially overlap in a contradictory way, but that doesn't mean the world itself exists like that. It's just a misunderstanding or like a mythology of a particular group of people that has some fault in the interpretation. And so that's a key difference, at least for me, like that idea that the world itself is how it is, and it's really the characters who interpret it that either like have the same opinion or differing opinions, you know? Yeah, one long conclusive story. That's it. Exactly right. And so that's got me thinking back as well, because every time we kind of pause, I'm thinking about my own work and I'm like, have I made contradictory statements? because I write a bunch of poetry mostly and shorter stories and not really like one big main story, I've got less material to go on. But like with Odin and Ada, yeah, I think I do have some contradictory things there. It's helpful to know, as embarrassing as it is. And it absolutely is a lot of work. The idea that you're creating an entire world just to show a tiny peek of it, it's so tantalizing. And as a writer, holy shit, it's hard to articulate exactly how much restraint needs to be exercised. Because as a writer, you want to show everything. You want to be like, look how much time I spent like crafting these intricate stories and creatures and characters. It's like there's an incredible, almost biological drive to share everything. Because it's like, well, why the fuck did I spend all this time making it if I'm just going to keep it to myself, you know? But the amount of restraint that it takes to have all this stuff that you very well could share, and people would fucking love it, you know, in Tolkien's case, at least. But instead choose not to. It is almost unheard of. It is literally against every fiber in a writer's being from experience, you know? Like, what's a good way to, to make an analogy for it? It almost feels like baking a cake and then giving someone a plate of just crumbs. That's how wrong it feels, you know? And yet, it kind of paradoxically makes the cake itself better. It's kind of, yeah, I don't know. That's not perfect as an analogy, but that's how it feels in terms of like how much you write versus how much you show. My first thought is always like, I want to show as much as possible. Because not only does it feel like a waste if not, but it feels like, oh yeah, this will help people understand better. But that may not necessarily be the case. Sometimes showing that restraint or utilizing that restraint can actually be more helpful in terms of cohesion and understanding, because you don't bog someone down with all these potentially unnecessary details that you love because they're yours, but they may not be that important for the particular story that you're telling in that moment in time. And so I really admire, not just from a reader's perspective, but from a writer's perspective, that idea of like, okay, there's a whole fucking like 1,000,000-word story that I've just made off to the side, but I'm going to take a little tiny slice of that, the only, you know, the part that's relevant, and share that with people. That takes so much self-control. And have I utilized that? I honestly don't know. I literally don't know. And again, it's hard because my domain is mostly in poetry. So when I talk about fiction, it's like I've got less material to really kind of base my opinions on, at least in my own work. But yeah, I don't think I could exercise that level of restraint. Holy shit. Unless I were planning to take that story and publish it like elsewhere, if that makes sense. But yeah. And no, we haven't done our affirmations yet. We're saving that now for the end of the stream, so you're in luck, not to worry. Cody, you were going to help a friend write a book, but he wanted to expand it out into a larger world. It's so tempting, right? Because you think, oh, actually, here's another idea and here's another idea. And all of a sudden you start to see the potential there, and that's really exciting. And, you know, if you can make it work, that's fantastic. But a lot of the times those details can start to really, potentially get away from you, you know? So that's really, really cool.
Picture. Now, those stories are often much elaborated, and what it looks like is that tradition moved off in a variety of different directions. It spread out from the source at the same time, the source that was the Beowulf poet's source, so that you eventually do get conflicting versions of the Sigurd and Sigmund story.
But
the Beowulf version is basically consistent with either of the later developments. In other words, the conflicts are in them, not in it between them.
Thank you, C. Lockett.
Now, Beowulf itself is maddeningly elusive. Does Waltheo intentionally give Beowulf a cursed necklace? Or is the necklace cursed, but she doesn't know about it? Or is it not cursed at all, and just later scholars have made up this cursed thing? Does Hrothulf later murder his cousins and siege the Danish throne? And if so, did the audience know this was happen? We just don't know. There's lots of stuff we just don't know because the references are broken. But in Beowulf, you never get the sense that you do in the Nibelungenlied or in Volsunga Saga or in Gudrun, that the writer has this general idea that two events go together but doesn't really know why and so messes it up by sticking them together. This is what happens for the Quarrel of the Queens in the Volsung material. That conflict was, the things that don't make sense made sense to someone. They just got messed up in translation later on, but not in Beowulf. All of this suggests, by the way, that the Beowulf poet was working in a living culture that he knew very well, while later writers were working from half-understood historical material and references that were broken even for them 500, 600, 1,000 years ago. The references in the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion material do the same thing as those in Beowulf, even though Tolkien just made that stuff up. And that's another reason why The Lord of the Rings reads differently than almost any other 20th century book, and why you have to read it in a certain way. Tolkien's work contains references that point not to the common stock of shared external cultural material that everybody knows, like T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, but he also doesn't just make crap up at the spur of the moment whenever it's useful, the way that Lovecraft or Thomas Pynchon does. So The Lord of the Rings has the coherence of Eliot, but the estrangement of Pynchon.
Best
and
of
the
both worlds.
combination of these two seemingly orthogonal forces creates something new and something different. And there's an analogy which I think is useful, and which you may have guessed from the vacation snapshots I've been projecting behind me. And actually, they're not from my vacation. They're from this company called Scholarly Sojourns that I've been doing tours with of Anglo-Saxon England and Iceland and Tolkien's England. You should come. We could get together. But I'm also projecting these here to avoid having, say, a picture of Homer Simpson saying dough hanging over my head for 15 minutes. But I also wanted to semi-subliminally get you thinking about ruins. Because I think that the idea and the image and the analogy of the ruin is extremely helpful for understanding Tolkien. In some ways, a ruin is coherent. It's usually just from one source, and it's usually more compact than the original building. Sometimes it's just a pillar. But a ruin is also fragmentary. It's a part estranged from its original context. A ruin is a reference that is at least as broken in information and cultural terms as it is physically. It makes concrete both loss and coherence, both damage and persistence. And blatant self-promotion here, the book I'm in the process of finishing on Tolkien is called The Tower and the Ruin. So you might guess that I think ruins are pretty important to understanding Tolkien. You would be right if you guessed that. Now, it's not just that there are a lot of ruins in The Lord of the Rings, although there are plenty, including the Tower of Amon Sul on Weathertop, the Stones of Eregion, the ruined cities of Osgiliath and Minas Morgul, and various other fallen statues, abandoned high seats, moss-covered walls, collapsed castles, broken bridges, and unmaintained roads that are littering Middle-earth. Really, they need a building code more than they need a white council. But I will spare you an exhaustive tracing of all the ruins in Middle-earth. You can get
that's
that in the book
interesting. This is really getting into the heart of it, and this is fucking cool. Because I have read, like offhandedly, that you can conceive of the Lord of the Rings trilogy as a kind of post-apocalyptic story. Like, at least as Tolkien conceived of it. There was, like, he wrote literally the birth of their entire planet. Like, how it started, how the elves were, like, the first race to kind of wake up, and then, like, you know, the mountains and shit were getting created, and like there's an actual god according to Tolkien in this story, and like demigods and shit like that, and all this stuff happens, and it's wonderful and great, right? And then little moments of discord, I suppose, arise and start slowly kind of diminishing the splendor and richness of the world in the first and second ages, with the conflicts and battles that go on, until you reach the part that we get to see in Lord of the Rings, where a lot of that, like the wonder and joy from that first awakening and like the earth being born, or they call it Arda or whatever, like a lot of that splendor is gone already. We're starting in like a medieval version of a post-apocalyptic situation. And that's interesting because as this lecturer is talking about ruins and the fragments and pieces that are left behind, yeah, post-war, because they've already had a bunch of wars and stuff like that. So we're not seeing Middle-earth or Arda at its peak. We're seeing kind of like, you know, our modern equivalent would be like after the nukes have like launched. We're seeing the fallout from that essentially. Maybe not as extreme, but in that way, like in terms of like the decline of the beauty and splendor and joy of the world, like we're already past the peak. And so it makes total sense to me that there are so many ruins, though I never really connected those ideas until now from this lecture. And what I think is it his name Michael? Sorry, I don't want to be disrespectful. I keep calling him this guy, Michael. What Michael talks about is how a ruin on its own is it's a fragment, yes, but it's a suggestion of what once was. And if you extrapolate, you can kind of almost see the pattern, like with those arches. How do you know there were more arches there? Well, you can only really guess, but just with what we can put together through our pattern making skills, like you can assume there was more arches, right? And similarly, you can assume that there were more ... whatever it is that we're reading about in Tolkien's work, that there were more creatures in the forest or whatever, that there were more little towns and stuff, and that there were more roads that led to places through what's left behind. And so, yes, they are assumptions, but they're not unfounded or like hastily founded, if that makes sense. And so that was really almost quite poetic how he described something being both like a fragment, but offering up like a knowledge that may not otherwise exist without it. And so I might actually rewatch that little snippet, but does that make sense? Like, because we don't often think of Middle Earth as we know it being post-apocalyptic, because we just see kind of the story of Frodo and how he Frodo Frog as he takes the ring to Mordor. But if we had known, like, yeah, those grander, happier times, that's so true. The world was fair in Durin's day. Like, if we had gotten to see, which you do get to see in the Silmarillion, but not in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like how much beauty and like peace and fairness there was that there used to be, you'd realize, oh shit, yeah, we're actually we're at a point in time where things are quite dire and troubled. Like, yeah, it's very interesting. The decision to write from there. I don't know.
If you guess that. Now, it's not just that there are a lot of ruins in the Lord of the Rings, although there are plenty, including the Tower of Amon Sul on Weathertop, the stones of Eregion, the ruined cities of Osgiliath and Minas Morgul, and various other fallen
you literally see the
statues,
passage of time.
abandoned high seats, moss-covered walls, collapsed castles, broken bridges, and unmaintained roads that are littering Middle-earth. Really, they need a building code more than they need a white council. But I will spare you an exhaustive tracing of all the ruins in Middle-earth. You can get that in the book if I ever finish it. But I want to show you this little graph, which shows that despite there being ruins all over the place, the only section of the book that really contains a great deal of something being actively ruined is the scouring of the Shire. The verb ruin achieves its greatest prominence here when the beloved home of the main characters... Is he
implying that they already were ruined? That's very interesting.
Partially destroyed, creating great pain in our protagonists, a pain to which we'll also return. Beyond the particular ruins in Middle-earth, there's also a deeper analogical relationship between what we read in the book and what Tolkien creates with it as a whole. He builds, if that's a right word, he builds a textual ruin in The Lord of the Rings. And so reading the book in those terms helps us to understand how it works and what effects it has on its readers. So, short digression, my long-suffering wife is a PhD student, or not a PhD student, she's a PhD, was a student when I was a student. She's a PhD in engineering, although she went to some engineering school in Massachusetts, Cambridge, rather than to CMU, but she's still okay. She really is.
Fancy.
So when I first figured out this ruin parallel, I was working through these ideas and I was saying things like, oh my gosh, I wonder what you have to figure out, like how to make a ruin. I doubt there's any kind of field in like how to make ruins. I mean, this could be like a whole new interdisciplinary thing. You could study ruins and you could figure out how to make it. And Raquel kind of sighed and she went, tribology. And she also told me that even at Carnegie Mellon, no one was going to laugh at a tribology joke, and she was right, so I think I owe her something now. I said people would. Even though Carnegie Mellon, by the way, has one of the best tribology labs in the entire world in this building, by the way, I think, or maybe it's over in Mech E. It's apparently not common knowledge that tribology is the name of the study of surfaces moving across each other, friction and wearing. It's about how things get ruined. So this is a picture of Phi Kappa Theta's 1989 Spring Carnival booth. The theme was children's toys and the beautiful house for which I, among other things, carved all the gingerbread and built the cupola, represented the board game Clue. And all the work I put in was justified when we won the booth competition that year, except, we didn't win the booth competition. We came in second place. I'd almost forgotten that had happened. I am not bitter. I am just pointing out there was a spiral staircase inside and it passed building code. This is Sutter's Mill. It's a picture of Phi Kappa Theta's 1990 Spring Carnival booth.
What is this Spring Carnival where you make like these gigantic structures? Is that a thing that still happens? If anyone is from that side of the world? Yeah. And I think it is worth mentioning that Tolkien's experience, like in the war and stuff, probably did color, or at the very least inform, the way that he wrote. The kind of attention given to things once beautiful potentially being, in jeopardy or in some sort of strife, and that passage of time being quite, relentless. And so, sorry. That idea of like showing history through half forgotten fragments is really effective. Interesting. And it does make sense that, it would show up in his work. I just wonder, like, ultimately it's a happy story, They vanquish evil, and go on to live peaceful lives. I just wonder, the implications of that declining of everything. Because as Tolkien said himself, I'm pretty sure, like as he wrote about, like after the events of Lord of the Rings, basically all the magic leaves the world and it turns into the world that we know. So, is it inevitable? The Spring Carnival booth still happens each year? That's crazy. And so what is it? You just make a big-ass house thing. I think he should have come first. His little house that he made with the staircase. Yeah, interesting though. I'm sorry that I don't have more articulate things to say, because often when it comes to things like this that have been already so well thought out, I don't have, like, there's no notes, essentially. All I can do is sit back in awe and be like, yes, yes, I agree. And so, yeah, the victors write the history. It's true. And in this case, when it comes to the actual perspective of the story, it's implied that it's kind of complicated, but it's a translation of a historical kind of text from the characters themselves. I think it's Frodo and Sam and maybe one or two others. And so that already gives us some idea that it's limited, you know. The knowledge that we're getting is limited, and almost, biased by who is giving it to us, the information. And so that already gives us some cultural context as well, which adds to that lived in feeling. And so, all these techniques, they're quite subtle in a way, but they all come together to make that experience that Michael talks about in this lecture of something feeling different to a typical book. It's oh, there's some sliver, however tiny, that this actually happened, and that's kind of cool. That plausible, however thin, idea that this could just be a glimpse into a world that we haven't seen but exists out there. And so,
mostly only built the working water wheel and the game, and I didn't skip spring break, and I didn't stay awake for 56 consecutive hours leading up to Carnival and then sleep through the entire Carnival itself, and I didn't step on a nail that came out through the top of my foot. Nevertheless, this booth won first place, the way Clue should have. But although I'm not bitter, even though Clue had stained glass windows on the first floor,
I love how this guy's just taking the time to voice his personal
in the two
gripes.
booths. One that was taught to me by my roommate, Jim Kempf, who was a drama production major, and you may have seen some of the windows he recently designed for FAO Schwartz, another Carnegie Mellon success. Well, after the Sutter's Mill booth was built, Jim went to work. He filled up an old-fashioned metal fire extinguisher with some kind of hideous mix of stain, paint, oil, and ink, and he sprayed it all over the boards. And he had me and about 10 other people spend hours and hours sanding down all the steps in the middles so that the treads formed a shallow parabola. He walked around the booth with a hammer, banging on things, making dents on the corners and the walls. He knocked boards out and then nailed them back just slightly crooked. And in the end,
the dedication.
Sutter's Mill looked like what we would expect Sutter's Mill to look like. And yes, I used to have hair. While Clue looked like the really awesome, beautiful, far too blue Victorian house that Peter Pizarris, now the CEO of Multiply, and I wanted to build one day. Another CMU success story. He's a multimillionaire and I'm not. It wasn't, in other words, it wasn't quite enough like the creepy old house from Clue because it wasn't worn enough. Because
it wasn't lived in.
Nevertheless, it was still better than the allegedly first place Fisher-Price garage that somebody else built, which I think looked just like that. That didn't even have an inside, much less a cupola. But it turns out that there are characteristic ways that human artifacts wear over time, so it's not surprising that the study of the phenomenon has a name, that aforementioned tribology, which I guess if nobody learns anything else tonight, you learned about tribology. But it may be surprising how good our eyes are at recognizing these signs, and thus requiring very clever drama production majors to develop a whole set of methods for artificially wearing props so that they don't dispel the illusions by being too new, too perfect. We recognize the patina of age. Right here on campus we have Hammerschlag in his nose. And then there's the fence, which has a look and a feel you can only get by applying hundreds and hundreds of coats of paint of different qualities and colors and different climate conditions with different intervals between them. And then there are ruins like those of Whitby Abbey or the monastery at Lindisfarne. And these show not only the weathering of time, but the damage caused by human violence, and then again by the elements. We recognize the marks of deep time on objects, and often we like it. Supposedly, when Yale University built their Gothic Revival buildings, they had acid poured on the newly carved stone to make it soft and weathered and look like that at Oxford. And then they regretted this 100 years later when they had to rebuild it all.
It's kind of like when you're asked to do like a letter for school that's meant to be like an old medieval or like historical letter, and so you like dye it with tea and like kind of burn the edges to make it look older, because if you just handed in a plain white piece of paper it would ruin the illusion. And I think what Michael is about to start talking about is the linguistic version of that. When Tolkien writes, he makes it feel, he basically burns the edges with these different methods of those broken references and the lowest knowledgeable character or whatever it was called. So that's really interesting. That idea of like purposefully kind of making things a little bit imperfect, which we talk about a lot here, in order to sell the experience or sell the atmosphere. Because yeah, it makes sense that if they're walking through, I don't know, like a town or whatever, that the roads would be kind of bumpy and uneven instead of like perfectly flat, you know? This applies both to the movies and the books, but like there's signs of wear and age and of being touched by not only history and the elements, but kind of like the differing desires and potential violent outcomes of what happens in, you know, a complex congregation of people, a society. Walls half crumbling down, or like old forgotten outposts that have been kind of ravaged by war. Those kind of details make it seem like, oh yeah, people were here before. They enacted their desires upon this environment, or the environment enacted its own force, and that's really, really special, you know? To keep things too perfect, which maybe sometimes is an impulse if you're a writer, because you want to seem like polished, like a professional. It can sometimes work to your own detriment. So, yeah. Enacting imperfection to properly sell or dissolve the illusion. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry about the pausing. I can't tell if it's annoying or actually helpful, but I figured that just straight up watching an hour-long video would be kind of tedious. That idea that the environment can speak for itself through its condition is really helpful, actually. And something I'll probably take into account in my own writing in the future. You don't even have to have a character there, though. If you're in a first-person point of view, you kind of do. But you know what I mean. Are authors in pursuit of perfection or imperfection? It depends. You can ask 10 authors, you'll get 11 responses back. I just think that ultimately a writer's like aim, it should be bolstered as opposed to hindered by their methods, you know? Like if you're trying to write a fantasy, then you shouldn't necessarily go full on Spartan, unless, I mean Spartan in terms of the writing style, not the actual, like, you know, the Spartans. Like, you know what I mean? Have whatever method you choose to write in or write with actually match the tone. If you're going to write sci-fi, then actually incorporate sci-fi elements, you know, which seems quite obvious. But sometimes, and I've found this for myself too, you start writing a particular story that maybe feels like it belongs to one genre, and then it's like halfway through you realize, actually, I'm writing something completely different. And so instead of holding on to that original idea for stubbornness sake or because it would be too much of a hassle to change it, I think allowing a story to exist in the genre that it's speaking towards, it's ultimately better for the art itself, for the writer, and hopefully for the reader and their experience. I hope that makes sense. And to our first time chatter, welcome in. Living in England, the environment pretty much shouts at you all the time. That's so funny and honestly relatable as, you know, someone here in Victoria, Australia, where the weather is just like, it literally is like as temperamental as anything. And so describe what you see as the imperfection and times aging and baked in. Yeah, it's like you can kind of get a sense for the environment itself being a character just on its own, and what it does and how it moves, how it affects, like, not just physical objects, but the moods and temperaments of people themselves. And so, hopefully to you guys who don't necessarily write as your chosen, like, thing, it's still helpful. Because this, I think, applies to a bunch of different disciplines, you know? In Victoria, Canada, it's same, but different. Yeah, it's funny, like, the weather can be so... It can sometimes here, like, literally decide what I do for the day. If it's too cold or too hot, I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm not going out in that. Or it can be, a force that demands consideration. The Commonwealth Gang, exactly. And so to have that in... not just, you know, kind of helping contextualize the temperaments of people, like in Lord of the Rings, but also having the markers of that physically show up is really cool. Like you see where the wind or sea or rain has like kind of left its mark on these buildings, you know, or cultivated the environments. An example that I'm thinking of maybe is like either forests or even like the spider lair. You can tell that no one's been around or no one's really survived in Shelob's lair because of the sheer amount of just spider webs fucking everywhere. You know what I mean? Like if there were just a little bit, and you'd be like, oh, okay, maybe this is a well-traveled area. But it's just covered in spider webs everywhere and like wrapped up people and shit. And like that speaks to a long-standing history of successful hunts, you know? Erosion as a form of storytelling is really interesting. And I'm sure there's a way to actually relate this to poetry as well, though I'd have to spend some time thinking about it. Because when you step back, you can kind of see poetry as a form of a ruin in a way. It's a fragmented piece of a potentially larger story. And so a lot of those same concepts apply, though, yeah, I haven't fully figured that out. I have to come back to it. It's water that eventually moves the mountain is beautiful. Yeah, I think that really sums it up, you know, like, and this is over many, 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 many years. And that gives that sense of like, I don't know, awe-inspiring, breathtaking, like, damn, this is quite grand in a way. And so, yeah, Ozymandias, I haven't read Ozymandias, though it's something that gets brought up so often, or at least it used to when I was in school. And it's like, we have these little kind of bite-sized stories in the form of poetry, and sometimes they're referencing larger works or larger stories, mythologies and stuff. Other times they're more self-contained, but they're doing similar things. They're using inference, forcing you to make patterns, like kind of relying on you to use your prior knowledge. And so that's interesting. It's like its own what's the word? Fuck, there is this very specific word for this. Ecosystem, potentially, or something along those lines. It's its own ecosystem that has... It needs you as a reader to do some of the work, to pick up some of the slack. And depending on how, you know, obtuse or how clear it is, the level of work differs. But they're quite related, I think, when it comes to poetry and just regular prose. Seeing the past, settings in the past, they do give you that opportunity to describe, like, basically the human touch, and sometimes even like nature's touch and stuff like that. Like, it's kind of what's a good example? Seeing like the fingerprints of history, which is really cool. When you, well, if you've lived through it or if you haven't, it's kind of like a point of connection between the reader now and like the characters back then. But also it's like, it's a sense of life and aliveness. It makes you feel like you're not just reading a story. This may be like an actual thing that happened. So yeah, I think I'd like to start doing that a bit more. Leaving traces, you know? Little fingerprints to make a world feel more lived in and not so perfect. You know, burning the edges of the paper. But yeah, it's hard because, like I said, I don't often write that much fiction. I'm starting to. But poetry is more my domain.
Artist Joseph Cornell, whose aesthetic sense is surprisingly often like Tolkien's, artificially weathered some of his famous boxes. You can see where this is going. The analogy I want to make is between Tolkien's texts and the ruin in the landscape, made precious in part because the patinas and the wear patterns are so difficult to counterfeit. But how do you make a textual ruin?
Yeah, okay.
Well, this is one way. This is a picture of Tolkien's original intentions for the key leaves of the Book of Mazarbul, the damaged volume found in the chamber with Balin's tomb. Instead of having the scene written the way it is, with Gandalf puzzling through the text and reading it out loud, Tolkien wanted to publish a facsimile of these leaves, which he created and then distressed. That turned out to be too expensive. By the way, I think the Book of Mazarbul is actually inspired by the Raginrudis Codex, which supposedly St. Boniface uses to ward off the attacks of the heathen. And you can see the slice marks in the top and bottom, and so it might even be true. It's also a little bit like the Beowulf manuscript, which was part of Sir Robert Cotton's library, and so was housed in the unfortunately named Ashburnham House. Yes, and it caught fire in 1731.
Oh, no.
And you can see that the manuscript was singed, though fortunately not destroyed. Other manuscripts were less lucky. We've lost maybe 1,500 letters out of Beowulf, many of which we can puzzle out with various techniques, but some sections of the manuscript, including the key transitional section, are sadly very hard to read. So one thing Tolkien could have done was to write his book and then physically damage it, set it on fire, rip the pages, chop it with a battle axe, and then pour some blood on it. That might be troublesome for a publisher, and it would also make The Lord of the Rings kind of fundamentally alien to the culture in which Tolkien wanted to be received. But here's another way. When most people encounter Beowulf, it's in a book like any other. Not only lacking fire damage, but lacking gaps and in problems where we don't have our full understanding of the work.
And Ben, you're absolutely right.
Modern English translation by Seamus Heaney,
it's like you couldn't write this
is
stuff.
not how a philologist like Tolkien or me or Professor Knapp engages with this work. Philologists work at a place in the continuum between damaged manuscript and paperback translation. And Tolkien had created the most important edition ever of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and he understood how editions of texts like Kleber's Beowulf have to handle the gaps and inconsistencies of the manuscript record, sometimes using the remarkable powers of scientific philology to reconstruct a missing word or make sense of an opaque passage, but other times requiring pure speculation, and even then relegating it to the apparatus criticus, the footnotes of the discussion at the back of the book. The gaps and inconsistencies are in many ways the most interesting part of the text, and yet they're left out of the modern English translations that we read as students. Thus, some of that patina of age is polished away. Beowulf becomes a monster-fighting superhero without any of the poem's cultural depth. Tolkien could see in Beowulf, in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Sir Orfeo, and the Reeve's Tale, the marks of the wearing of the text as it tumbled down the stream of culture. Philologists are the tribologists of text. I'm going to get that word into your head. Philologists are the tribologists of text. Minds lucky enough to be trained by great teachers like Professor Knapp know how to detect the inconsistencies, the gaps, the broken references. And all of these features give old texts a certain feel, a sense that though they're incomplete now, they once were coherent. Broken references are markers of age. They're features of the textual patina that in the case of Beowulf or the Volsung saga developed over vast cultural time, or, in Tolkien's writing process, over the many drafts and reticulated textual histories of the Silmarillion material and the Lord of the Rings. A broken reference has become separated from its background information. But if the reference nevertheless continues to be replicated, it can evolve into what scholars of oral tradition have called a traditional referent. Just like a reference, a traditional referent metonymically invokes previously accumulated information through communicative economy. But unlike a reference, which is linked to cultural information that is outside the text, Pache Derrida, but he's wrong anyway on that count, a traditional referent becomes linked only to information inside the discourse. For example, in certain Icelandic sagas in which he appears, Bjarni Brod Helgason is a peaceful man. In Vapinfjörðinga saga, we're going to be going there if you go on my Iceland trip, he's reluctant to take revenge. He's eager to reconcile in Vothu Brandstatter, and he's clever and honorable in Thorstein's Thatr Stanarhogs. So his nickname, Viga Bjarni, Killer Barney, is somewhat at odds with his character, especially in the sagas that come from the east part of Iceland, where Bjarni was from. The distinction between name and personality seems to be the point, especially in Thorstein's Staffstruck. But the denotative meaning of Viga Bjarni's name appears to have overpowered his character in the later sagas from the west part of Iceland, where people had not known Bjarni Brod Helgason, or they didn't know the transmitted knowledge about his personality. In those texts, Killer Barney is now a blood-loving, death-dealing maniac.
This is interesting. This is going in a place that I didn't expect. It's kind of talking about how iterations over time kind of almost take on new meanings with those broken references, or because of those broken references. And I'm missing context because I haven't read these other books that Michael's talking about, but that's interesting. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of other situations where that could have happened in my own work or other works that I enjoy. It's kind of like the modern day version of when a fandom, their headcanon, is so popular that it kind of becomes the assumed actual canon. Like, memes transform. That's such a succinct way to put that. And the cultures change, absolutely. So do you guys know any like moments where that has happened? Because I know they happen all the time in fandoms, but off the top of my head, I can't think of one. Fuck. I'm trying to think of the fandoms that I actually am a part of. Actually, weirdly enough, Undertale probably has a bunch of those. Like, his personality has gone through all these different kind of versions, I suppose, based on what the collective fandom, like their desires are at the time. And yeah, like his motivations and desires are kind of kept pretty low key in the actual text, the game itself. But then they're extrapolated on by the fans to the point where it almost becomes like assumed to be the original intent. Yeah, like him being able to go to different universes and stuff like that. There was another one. Maybe even... Fuck. Even one in Lord of the Rings. Or like in Harry Potter. Actually, yeah, there's in Harry Potter, I use this example because it's quite popular and hopefully most people know of it. It's not really said what happens after the events of the books, but a lot of people have that headcanon that there's like a trial that goes on for the kind of crimes that occurred in the wizarding world. And often in those trials, the Malfoy family, or what's left of it, is put under trial, right? And people have differing opinions on this, but a lot of people believe that Harry himself goes on to then defend Draco, even though it's debatable whether or not he deserves that, right? But that is quite a popular, like, assumption of what happens after the events of the books. And there's a point sometimes where things get so popular in the fandom that it kind of overtakes whatever the original thing was anyway. Or at least the Malfoy files. And I think, so it's interesting that we're talking about this in particular now in the lecture, and I wonder how that's going to relate to Tolkien. Maybe I should just let the man finish, but that's interesting that we're going here in particular. We're kind of taking a diversion through other texts, and I'm sure it's going to relate back beautifully, but yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised.
I hate you, you hate me, I had to slaughter members of my family. Sorry.
The Killer Barney effect.
Oh yeah, or
shows
season 8
how
of Game of Thrones. You're so right. That's the perfect example. That is actually the perfect example. Even the actors themselves from Game of Thrones, and I haven't seen Game of Thrones. I know I'm like the only person in the world who hasn't. But Emilia Clarke, whose character went, if I'm not mistaken, her character went in a very interesting / strange direction. She was literally saying, like, you know, after I read the script, I just went outside and started crying because, like, she was like, what the fuck did the writers do here? But, like, that is a very perfect example of the fandom just collectively being like, yeah, nah, that's not what happened. And so when you talk about it to people, they're like, basically they have their own version of that ending or their own version of particular events that happened. And that's kind of interesting. It's more like a defiant reason as opposed to just like the passage of time, but very astute. Good pickup on that.
Get separated from external material to which they originally pointed, and then take on a new set of meanings based on their surface forms in their local context. A broken reference becomes a full traditional referent when it begins to be replicated in its own form. References that have evolved then into mnemonically stable forms are more likely to become traditional reference. And mnemonically stable forms are exactly those of a culture's poetry, marked by certain formal features like alliteration, meter, and rhyme. I tried to come up with a traditional referent to drop into my little registration story, and the best I could come was like registration legislation, which actually made me throw up in my mouth a little bit, so I decided not to use that.
This is interesting.
But by definition, mnemonically stable forms change less or more slowly than their matrices. Therefore, they're more likely to preserve archaisms and older forms, and thus linguistically marking traditional reference, which are already, because they're broken, marked semantically, marked at the level of content. And some of the references in The Lord of the Rings have the characteristics of traditional reference. Elrond's comparison of Frodo to those heroes in the First Age is marked by patterns of formal features. Elf friends of old, Hador and Húrin and Túrin and Beren himself were assembled. The passage is organized paratactically.
Damn, this is fucking crazy. This is getting to like 500 IQ level here, where I'm even like trying to like capture the thread of all these different threads of what Michael's talking about to put it together. And I don't even think I fully grasp it, but sometimes you just have to let it wash over you. There is a poetic quality to those, to that passage, but I wonder, like, yeah, okay. Middle-earthy territory, it is. And yeah, as for Game of Thrones, yeah, I don't blame you for stopping once it passed the books. I feel like there's basically, yeah, no one on Earth who was happy with that ending, except maybe the showrunners.
Subordination and the repeated coordinating conjunctions, and is an example of anaphora. And these poetic features contribute to the passage's reproduction of its own form. You can also see this in things where the Palantiri are the stones of seeing. The ruler of Rivendell is Elrond half-elven. The Rohirrim are descended from Hador the golden-haired. The presence then of not just broken references.
Yes, Ben, I think that's exactly what's happening. So Michael's trying to imply that the poetic potential qualities of these references make them more easily reproducible, implying a long cultural history of people just saying this over and over, keeping the kind of the meme alive, even if they don't get exactly where it comes from. Keeping the idea more stable. Yeah, I think that's what he's kind of getting at, which is interesting. And yeah, it's so cute to imagine Tolkien just like listening to this and being like, oh yeah, I totally did that on purpose. But think about memes, because they're the perfect analogy. Sometimes memes get so divorced from their original context, they just become part of general conversation. Like when I say, I'm feeling like Homer Simpson type beat, it's like, what does that mean? It's gone away from its potential original meaning, as in this kind of thing, like a beat, and just become a part of normal conversation. But it speaks to a shared history. Something happened, like something created that phrase. And maybe there is a poetic quality to it, type beat. You know what I mean? Like there's a cadence or rhythm there. And I think what Michael's trying to say is that those different effects that come about in poetry make it easier to reproduce and therefore keep that history alive. Yeah, so you guys you're way more on the ball than I am. That's interesting, because I was wondering how that idea of poetry comes into play here. But of course, I mean, there's so much poetry in Lord of the Rings, and the way it's written itself is like, it's got the consideration that's typically only reserved for poetry. So I never thought of that before. That's really cool, actually. Memes. I wonder if he'll talk more about memes. He mentioned memes a little bit, but yeah. And yeah, of course, Tolkien's influence, or being influenced by other writers and his friends and stuff like that, is interesting. C.S. Lewis, also a writer, poet, like, I never realized that when reading, because I have read that passage and I've read that chapter. So sometimes the poetry kind of sneaks up on you, which is cool. I'm all for sneaking poetry into every aspect of life. And I do wonder if Tolkien did that on purpose, or if he just had that naturally poetic inclination to make that sound so satisfying, I suppose, to the ear. Let's keep going. But yeah, that's interesting. Poetry as a form of memorableness.
Deemed to be traditional reference in The Lord of the Rings made the work not only appear to participate in a wider culture, but to be part of a tradition. And
Right.
other features of the book indicates it's a tradition of a specific kind, a textual tradition. Throughout The Lord of the Rings, we find hints that the cultural background that's informing the broken references is instantiated and transmitted primarily through texts. Most prominently,
Makes
there's the
sense.
frame narrative of The Lord of the
Well,
Rings.
yeah, and keep in mind, I'm sorry to interrupt again. Please forgive me. But keep in mind that almost has to necessarily be true, considering the fact that they're kind of in a semi-medieval time period. Text and, like, oral retellings and traditions like that almost have to be the only way that information is passed on, because there's no internet, you know what I mean? There's no way to send a message halfway across the world without some great effort put in. Like, if you're going to travel on horseback or send a pigeon, I don't even know if they did that, or like send some kind of messenger in your wake. There's no kind of like instantaneous way of sharing things, and so there had to be basically text and just telling someone to their face as a form of like recording history, and contributing to it, etc., etc. With a little asterisk, there was the Palantirs or whatever, which were kind of like these crystal balls, like seeing balls or whatever. But if I'm not mistaken, and I could very well be, using those was detrimental while Sauron was still a thing, because apparently he had like his influence kind of seeped in, and he could like make you feel really yuck if you used them. And also, they didn't necessarily record history. It was just like you could look into them and just see stuff. So, yeah, there wasn't an internet in Middle-earth. So text became basically the only form of knowledge keeping and also knowledge receiving, besides having some wise person just share, all of history with you. And so he's probably going to say exactly that as I unpause. But I think, thinking about the constraints of the actual world itself, it makes total sense. And so, hopefully if our internet ever goes out, like the world's internet, hopefully we still have a lot of that stuff saved, physically, and it's not totally lost forever.
Being a translation of the Red Book of Westmarch, but not just the Red Book itself, which was based originally on Bilbo's and Frodo's diaries, but a certain copy of the Red Book that was revised and updated and expanded by Findegil, the king's scribe in Gondor.
Damn.
You've already got at least a 3-stage and probably a 5-stage textual tradition right in that frame narrative, not just one frame. Ever wonder why in the Lord of the Rings
Oral
people
history
can
of
just burst
Skibbity
into
Toilet,
speech in
amazing.
languages that they don't actually speak? Or spontaneously recite metrically flawless poetry that they are supposed to have made up on the spur of the moment? Or translate Elvish to the common speech on the fly and have it come out as well-formed verse? Yes, you're not the only ones who have wondered that. But the answer is that the Lord of the Rings gives us the impression of being part of a textual tradition. In the case of the poetry, it's like the manuscripts of the Venerable Bede's Ecclesiastical History, in which Bede gives his Latin translation of the poem Cadman's Hymn, which was originally written in Old English. Soon
This lecture
afterwards,
is very,
somebody else comes along and
intertextual.
writes the actual
Very
poem
clever.
down there in the margin. Later copies then interpolate this poem into an Old English translation and leave out the Latin entirely. This is one of the ways you have to read The Lord of the Rings, differently from mainstream novels of the 20th century. Rather than characters bursting into poetry being an embarrassing flaw, people saying, oh my God, nobody does that. It's a powerful mimetic feature. It's just not mimetic of real life, it's mimetic of the textual traditions of the Middle Ages. And it's not just the traditional references inserted into poems that give this impression. There's also a mix of prose styles. From almost biblical high style, such as sing and rejoice, you people of the Tower of God, to goofy hobbit jokes and everything in between. This is a dendrogram that illustrates the vocabulary distributions, and you'll see how
Holy
many
shit.
large branches there are. That's characteristic of multiple novels by multiple people, not one person in his own novel, which usually ends up looking something like just that part of the dendrogram, a step going down. So it's very inconsistent. And those inconsistencies don't only operate at the level of the vocabulary, they operate at semantic levels and higher. For example, is Tom Bombadil the oldest living thing in Middle-earth? Or is Treebeard? Gandalf says that Treebeard is. Tom says that he is. Tolkien never resolves it. Does Glorfindel's horse have a bridle and reins or not? Says he doesn't, except Frodo pulls on it at one point. Where did it come from, we must ask. In these and other features of The Lord of the Rings, we get the hint of it being part of a textual tradition, one that has been contributed
That's
to by
interesting.
various
I'm still trying to grapple with this point. I think he's saying the framing, as in this is a translation of a diary of another diary. He's saying that kind of copy of a copy situation lends itself rather to that kind of mixing of knowledge and tone with contradictions that deepen the text. It's interesting though, because I agree, but I'm like, how is that a thing? Because before we were talking about how it doesn't have contradictions in its own law. Oh, actually, no. The world itself is not contradictory, but the way the people actually perceive the world can be. That's interesting. Great.
Hands in hands, and that has been worn by the passage of time. And that's why you have to read Tolkien in a special way, one that medievalists are used to employing, but which ordinary critics often don't get, because they didn't have Professor Knapp as their teachers.
In what way is that?
Let's take a moment to criticize one, shall we? Catherine Stimson, who was once a big-time famous critic, she mocked Tolkien for,
We're about
she
to get
said,
a roast.
always writing, to the Eot they came, rather than they came to an island. Bummer for her that the phrase to the Eot they came never appears in The Lord of the Rings. Oops. But don't worry, that's just a trivial error. And she's actually wrong in her larger big point also. Because she's wrong about Eot, as many other critics who've gotten worked up by Tolkien, by saying it's archaic. He said laving his hands when he just meant washing. It's artificial. No good writer writes this way. Except that, as we just noted, the conservation of archaic forms is characteristic of traditional reference. And those words are contributing to the pervasive sense that The Lord of the Rings is part of a long textual tradition, not something
Right, so he's arguing that the archaic language is not gratuitous. It's serving a deeper purpose. It's not just there to be like, ooh, look how fancy I am, saying he laved his hands, as in he washed his hands. Which it's funny because I thought that was obvious, but I guess some critics were thinking he was just being archaic and old-timey for no reason. Interesting.
Invented by one Oxford Don. Oh, and by the way, also, Eot is the technically correct name for what Tolkien's talking about. A low, gravelly semi-island that only sticks out of the water when the river water level is low. Furthermore, the etymological source of Eot is the Anglo-Saxon word ait, and since the place where the Eots are is on the border of Rohan, where they speak Anglo-Saxon.
Damn, he's eviscerating this critic.
Turns out that Eot is exactly the appropriate word, fail for poor Ms. Stimson. Also, laving, which was some other critic whose name I couldn't remember, was wrong. Laving wasn't bad because at that particular moment, they are not just washing off blood or dirt, but actually having a sort of quasi-magic ritual where Strider is taking herb-scented liquid and putting it on the foreheads of people under a magic spell of the Black Breath. And so, in fact, laving would be the precise correct word there, used in Beowulf in the same sense.
That's so funny. He's basically saying, you are so wrong on basically all fronts. Oh, gosh. That's interesting. Yeah, some critics can really just be like, they're just hating for no reason. I never thought that, like, people would specifically point out the archaic words and be like, see, this should be modern. Like, what? Do you want Gandalf to, like, rock up with an iPhone and be like, I'm gonna call the cops on you, mate? It's like, what the fuck? Oh, some critics are lazy and think reading should just be like absorbing soup with no effort on part of the reader. That's so funny. And honestly, it is a thing that I find regrettable because, you know, it's such it misses so much of the richness and the wonderment that comes from reading or just like enjoying art in general. Like when people criticize modern paintings and they're like, oh, that's just a color on a canvas. And it's like, yeah, well, that may be true, but like there's a lot more you could actually get out of it, a lot more enjoyment. And so, yeah, I guess to me it's always seemed silly to criticize something that's like literally, I don't know, the point in a way. Like, yeah, it's not just there for show. It's not just there for no reason. But sometimes, I guess maybe some people just feel for one reason or another that a certain technique or a certain method it cannot be justified. Like it cannot be justified by its own existence. And I guess that's fair, you know? Like, not everyone is going to be convinced by what you make, whether it's a piece of writing or a song, da-da-da-da-da. You know, like just before we listened to one of my songs that has heavy auto-tune on it. I could sit here and talk for hours and hours upon why I think the effect serves the piece of art. But it's not necessarily going to convince anyone having the experience of listening to it that it's any better, you know? And so as long as a critic is operating in good faith, it's hard to like dismiss what they're saying. But sometimes they're not being in good faith, and that's the sad part, because it's like you could actually be getting so much more out of this. You could be enjoying yourself so much more, and a lot of that is lost if you're kind of just like I don't know, almost looking for something to make fun of in a way. Yeah, it's just kind of like it speaks to me, or it reveals to me that our approaches to art are fundamentally different, as in mine versus whatever critic. It's like, oh, you're coming at this because you want something to tear down, right? I'm coming at this from the perspective of like, I don't know, a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness. Yeah, eat a Snickers before you read something and criticize it. Exactly. It's just, I think critics have a really important role to play in the art world, but good ones, you know? We need to critique the critics, I think. Yeah, some people do just have their minds made up, which is sad. I'd like to believe that I have my own convictions that are quite firm, but that I'm never stubborn in the sense that I couldn't be convinced when presented a better argument, like a more convincing, compelling argument. Like, you know, I might say, oh, I think this thing is good or bad for these reasons. But if someone were to like show me reasons to the opposite, I wouldn't just be like, oh, la la la, I didn't hear you. You know what I mean? Because I think, again, you miss all the richness and beauty and pleasure that you could get out of a certain thing if you do that. And at that point, you're just being willfully ignorant, which is something I don't like. Yeah. It's funny, this guy's literally just roasting the critics by being like, you are not just wrong, you're like exceptionally wrong. Like on a word level, you are wrong. On a definition level and on a like historical contextual level. So that's quite funny to me.
And having almost a biblical sense going back. So pro tip, modernist critics do not meddle in the affairs of philologists. For you are crunchy and taste good with ketchup. I mean, for they are subtle and quick to anger and know more than you do. Indeed, if I had to give a one-phrase answer for the question of how should we read Tolkien, I'd answer like a philologist. And then maybe I'd take pity and say that what you should read is as someone who studies histories of languages and text, because when you do, you see very clearly that the features of Tolkien's text that are different from mainstream modernist fiction of the 20th century aren't necessarily errors or flaws, but are factors contributing to the particular effects of The Lord of the Rings. Whoops. So the epistemic regime and the least knowledgeable character point of view combine to make us experience some of what the characters are experiencing. They're learning about the cultural world in a piecemeal way. At the same time, the broken references, the traditional reference, the archaism in vocabulary and in style, and the many variations in prose, the use of multiple frames, the references to multiple texts, all combine to distance us from the very world that we are experiencing. We are part of that world. It's vividly present in the way that Tolkien writes description, almost always from the point of view of 4.5 feet above the ground, limited mostly to line of sight, described in terms of broad impressions rather than explicit sensory detail, all of which I learned in Creative Writing Workshop was bad. And it is in creative writing, but not in Tolkien. So we're part of this world, but at the same time, we're separated from it by a vast gulf of time. We might be holding a paperback book with Barbara Remington's ridiculous illustrations on the cover. I mean, really, emus? Bulbous fruit? But when reading, we get the impression of vast cultural depth. And that simultaneous feeling of immediate presence and irreparable loss, of connection and utter separation, is also the effect of the ruin in the landscape. Because a ruin, despite all its permanence, no, because of all its permanence, is a tangible marker. It's an absolute insistence on the pastness of the past. And that absolute pastness, combined with
the absolute insistence of the pastness of the past.
Everything else we've discussed is the generator of the dominant emotion in Tolkien's work. And that emotion is nostalgia. The pain for the loss of one's own home. And nostalgia has a pretty bad reputation in 20th century literature, so I was tempted to use the German word, Heimweh, home pain. But they're the same, and nostalgia doesn't deserve this opprobrium anyway. Real, deep nostalgia is an intense love for an unrecoverable past, a joy triggered by tiny glimpses of the past and the present, and most of all, a pervading sadness. It's Franz Hofmeister, a Dutch videographer, filmed his daughter for a couple minutes a day every week, once a week, for 12 consecutive years, and then ran it all as one film, so you can see her
this isn't going to make me
growing
cry,
and
is
aging
it?
as that goes on. We don't have to do any deep psychoanalysis of
blocking it.
Tolkien and his personal history to understand why he might have felt such a longing of nostalgia. Maybe for the idyllic rural days in Warwickshire before his mother's death, or for the beautiful summer of 1914. But you don't have to have Tolkien's tragic childhood and youth to feel deep nostalgia. You don't have to have your father die and then your mother be shunned by her family for her conversion to Catholicism, and then have your mother die and leave you an orphan, and then have almost all of your friends killed in the trenches of World War I, and then get trench fever and never fully recover your health. You don't have to have that happen to you to feel the pain of a lost home. Simply being a human, incarnate in the irreversible stream of time, is enough. And for me, the sense of Heimweh is utterly acute.
In the current of an irreversible stream of time. This guy's spitting poetry. Oh my gosh, this is actually getting me in my feels right now.
Almost unbearable. When I watched that little film that Franz Hofmeister made by photographing his daughter once every week for 12 years, I know from clear memory that I would not want to re-experience some of those moments again with my own child, the anxiety, the illnesses, the exhaustion. But what wouldn't I give to be able to go back to some of those moments in more than memory? The pain is only made bearable, the sadness only made blessed by love and by art. One doesn't need to go down the rabbit hole of Deleuze and Guattari, especially because St. Augustine said it all first, to see that reading is a kind of doubled consciousness, existing somewhere between pure memory and lived experience. When we look at our own children, we see not only their current forms, but all they have been before. In this kind of doubled perception, love and sadness are intertwined. The ruin in the landscape, or the textual ruin created by all of Tolkien's techniques, catalyzes this change, linking together the imagination, the current experience, and recollection, entwining the past and the present with each other, so they are, in Aragorn's dying words, more than memory. More than memory transmutes the pain of exile, of separation and loss through the moment of time, the Heimweh, into something still sad, but now, as Tolkien says of the tears of the hobbits at their parting at the Grey Havens, blessed without bitterness. In the year 1110, the bodies of King Alfred, his wife Alswith, and their son Edward the Elder were translated from the New Minster to Hyde Abbey, where they were buried in front of the high altar. The abbey was so thoroughly destroyed during the dissolution of the monasteries that only the gatehouse remained. Not until the 20th century did archaeologists identify the previous location of the old high altar, and for years the spot was unmarked. A stretch of King Alfred Place between Monk's Road and Alswitha Terrace, commemorated, in the words of Simon Keynes, only by the flowers that grow in a suburban back garden. But in more recent years, a park was built with 3 cenotaphs to mark the old locations of the graves. And then artist Tracy Shepard created an etched glass panel that depicts the interior of the abbey. If you stand so that the grave markers in the etching are aligned with those in the ground, you have the uncanny sense of being in 2 times at once. But the edifice, the accomplishment of human building, is 1,000 years past, faded in white. It is there in front of you, but it's forever beyond your reach. Just as the lost days of the past can be called to memory, but cannot be lived again, by standing in this place, you can experience the doubling, see with more than the mind's eye, and yet always the houses and the parked cars and the lamp posts and the electric wires are ghosts just beyond the white walls, peeping through the mist, no matter how hard you try not to see them, the present overcoming the past. I feel this walking on Carnegie Mellon's campus today. The past is everywhere and yet at the same time out of reach, overlaid permanently by the present, worn away by time and change and even fallible memory. You don't have to wait a quarter century from the time of some of your most cherished memories to have this feeling, though such a gap certainly accentuates it. The price of a memory is the memory of the sorrow it brings, says the song. Pain for the lost home is common to every human as we are separated from our childhoods, from our youths, from our first experiences. How do you read Tolkien? By paying attention to the ways that different features of his works combine to produce and transform sadness, not into bitterness, but into something richer, greater, something fully human. Reading Tolkien this way, you see the true scope of his achievement to touch the heart. And you understand how much more fully how Sam's words, "Well, I'm back," are both joyous and heartbreaking. Thank you.
God damn, that kind of blew me away right at the end there. That last however long it was, 5-10 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes. Let's come back here for a sec. Literally speechless. Like, the fact that that's just for free on YouTube is fucking crazy. What an incredible culmination of everything that Michael, the lecturer, was talking about. Such a sweet and quite tender, like, conclusion. Yeah. That video of, like, that little girl, like, the second of her, like, growing up every day, fuck, that got me. That idea of nostalgia being kind of an underlying force that's both sad but not bitter was really interesting. Quite true, I think. And that idea of the price of a memory is the kind of the sorrow that it invokes, knowing that you can't go back to it. Yeah, it made me sad too. Like, kind of choked me up a little bit there. No notes, pure poetry. So Michael D.C. Drought, well done. And yeah, I don't know, like, I hope that even if you guys aren't really that into Lord of the Rings, if you haven't read it, or if you're not really into Tolkien, that it was still an informative lecture. And yeah, that idea of the doubling of the past into the future, with that kind of ghostly panel that you can look through was really cool too. Yet still the present is pervasive, like the modern electrical wires and the cars and stuff like that, they're unavoidable in a way. So interesting, very, very interesting. Goodness me. I feel like it might take a little while, I'm not sure how long, before I can really synthesize everything that we just watched into something more, you know, more cohesive or helpful. But that was so wonderful. Yeah. It's quite a special thing to have a lecturer be so clear, concise, poetic, and also have quite novel insights to give. Sometimes a lecturer is really good across the board, but what they're saying, you kind of have heard it before. Like, you kind of get what they're trying to say. But this actually had a lot of things that I hadn't ever considered before. And so to do all of that in an hour, basically exact, is I just give my kudos, because that is so hard to do. Like, I'm sure he must have like written this and rewritten it and edited like his speech many, many, many times over because, yeah, no notes from me. God. Maybe we'll start a book club. Like, I'll just read to you guys a page or a few pages of The Lord of the Rings, like, every stream. I don't know. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. And you guys actually really came in clutch there, because there were a couple of moments where the analogies or like the examples that Michael was giving were a bit lost on me. But then it was like checking in with you guys. It helped me realize, oh, that's what he's trying to say. So thank you. I probably wouldn't have made those connections without you. And Melodies isn't here, but hopefully, yeah, next time he's in, we'll say that we watched it. And yeah, this VOD will be available to rewatch if that's of interest to anyone. I think it's time to wrap up. We'll do our affirmations, and yeah, probably we'll see you guys tomorrow. I don't know, I don't know why not. I don't see why not. And we can just hang out again. So, a fantastic recommendation, absolutely. If you would like to watch the full thing, it's from start to finish. I mean, incredible. Here's a link. And here's another link to our affirmations, the video that it comes from. Who are we gonna raid? I don't even know. This is, what everyone's always waiting for. Me too. A little tradition of ours here. Like, we were talking about traditions in the lecture. This is one of our traditions. And so, hopefully it gets reproduced well into the future. Without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to say, yes. Yes, you are. You are ready. You are equipped. You are connected. You are unique. You are gorgeous. You are loved, and my personal favorite, you are alive. So thank you for being here with me, watching some videos, like kind of keeping it chill today. But more importantly than that, thank you for being here on this earth in general. I know it's not always easy, but it is always, always important. And I strongly believe we can make life good for one another. So stick around for that, because I think that's really what it's all about, right? I'm going to pick someone random to raid into. But in general, please take care of yourselves, do something nice for yourself. Maybe watch or read Lord of the Rings, who knows? We'll get back to it, basically, before you know it. Who's live? Ferret Software is always live. Let's see. I feel like saying hi to some ferrets again. It's too cute not to. There we go. Hopefully that's working. Yeah, till next time. Cugs and hisses, hugs and kisses. Behave, or at the very least, don't get caught. I'll see you tomorrow, and who knows what we're going to get up to. Anything goes. So, yeah, I'm glad I got my camera working. And thanks to Melodies, Mjolnir Melodies specifically, for that recommendation. Absolutely nailed it. So, yeah, that's all, guys. Take care. Mwah. Be well. I'll see you tomorrow.